Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather. We've had some sunshine across the north and the west, but over the next 24 hours it does turn more unsettled. Low pressure dominating the weather yet again over the next few days. We see further spells of rain, heavy showers pushing across the country, some brisk winds later on in the week as well. For the evening time, we do have some heavy showers pushing into central southern areas. We could see some localised flooding here. Met Office warning in force for the evening time, and then overnight this rain pushes slowly northwards. Further rain pushing into eastern areas too, with Northern Ireland and Scotland seeing the driest weather with some clear spells, but the vast majority of us, temperatures remaining above freezing. So a mixed start on Monday. Outbreaks of rain across northern England into central parts and Wales as well. Some of this heavy at times. Bright skies following across central southern areas, but into the afternoon we'll see some heavy thundery showers developing, some hail possible. Parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland will see some drier weather, some sunny spells, and here temperatures lifting to around 13 or 14 Celsius. Feeling quite cold under the cloud and rain. Temperatures in single figures. For Tuesday, we'll see areas of rain across the top and tail of the country. In between, we'll see some sunny spells, but some scattered showers also developing. And it remains unsettled for the week ahead. Further showers and some heavy spells of rain as well, and temperatures just climbing a little.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 AM on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 PM, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 PM, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. It's just coming up to 3 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. For the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me in the next hour, broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton. In a few moments' time, we'll be going to head-to-head in the clash with GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and also former Tory aide Claire Pearsall. Well, here's what's coming up. King Charles has attended the Easter service, his first royal appearance since receiving cancer treatment, after it was revealed the Clapham chemical attacker converted to Christianity. I'll also be asking whether the church leaders should be held accountable for the migrants they convert. Then, does the union flag put off ethnic minorities? Some Labour MPs are reportedly concerned that it could. And the controversial gender clinic, the Tavistock Centre, finally closes its doors. We'll be discussing that. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Anna, thank you. The top stories this hour. King Charles has made his first significant public appearance since his cancer diagnosis. Joined by the Queen, he smiled and waved as he left an Easter Sunday service at St George's Chapel in Windsor and went on to greet crowds. Other members of the royal family were also there, but the Prince and Princess of Wales missed the service as Catherine continues her cancer treatment. Our royal correspondent Cameron Walker says this was an important moment for the monarch.
The King was very much determined to attend this very important event in the Christian calendar. He himself, of course, is head of the Church of England, so he would have had a very strong religious feeling needing to be there. But of course, there's another reason, and that is to provide a message of reassurance to the British public following the Princess of Wales's separate cancer diagnosis and her treatment.
Meanwhile, the Archbishop of Canterbury has wished the King and Princess of Wales well during his Easter sermon at Canterbury Cathedral. Justin Welby encouraged the congregation to pray for Charles and Catherine and praise their dignity as they both undergo treatment for cancer. Pope Francis has presided over Easter Mass at the Vatican. Tens of thousands of people turned out to see the pontiff and the delivery of his Urbi et Orbi blessing from the balcony of St Peter's Basilica. Pope Francis, who's been dealing with health problems in recent weeks, used his address to renew his call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, along with the release of all Israeli hostages. In his Easter message, the Prime Minister paid tribute to the work of churches and Christian communities across the country.
Happy Easter, everyone. This weekend, as people come together to celebrate and reflect on the message at the heart of the Easter festival, I want to pay tribute to the incredible work of Christians in this country. The churches, charities, volunteers and fundraisers who live the Christian values of compassion, charity and self-sacrifice, supporting those in need and demonstrating what it means to love thy neighbour.
Sir Keir Starmer also posted on social media saying it's the time for optimism and new beginnings. The Easter messages come as a new poll suggests the Tories are on track for their worst general election result. Survation found the party could win fewer than 100 seats, with Labour predicted to sweep to power with a landslide victory of 468 seats. The 15,000-person poll indicated the Conservatives would be wiped out in Scotland and Wales and hold just 98 seats in England. In other news, deteriorating weather conditions have failed to deter migrants in the Channel. Almost 600 people were intercepted in small boats this weekend, despite strengthening winds. It brings the total number of those who've arrived illegally to more than 5,200 this year. That's a third higher than the figure recorded this time last year. People smugglers are being accused of putting their lives in danger by launching overcrowded dinghies that can't handle large swells. The Energy Secretary has warned that Labour's dangerous net zero plans would leave Britain at the mercy of China. Labour has pledged to convert the country to clean power by 2030, 5 years earlier than the Conservatives. But Claire Coutinho told The Telegraph the plan would leave the UK over-reliant on Chinese-made metals, cables and batteries, just as Europe was weaning itself off Russian oil and gas. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now let's return to Nana.
Thank you, Tatiana. It's just coming up to 6 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. Our brave King Charles, bless him, he waited patiently for his turn on the throne, being guided by his mother, our exceptional late Queen Elizabeth II. What a woman. She was the embodiment of excellence. Dignitaries from all over the world, even from conflicted countries, would put aside their grievances to come together and pay their respects. She was loved, as are our new king and queen, King Charles and Queen Camilla. But it hasn't been easy for the pair. But Camilla won our hearts by quietly showing her dedication to the role and her clear love for King Charles. Whilst his relationship with Diana was a turbulent one, he is at peace with Camilla, and you can see it. Of course, both are and were exceptional women in their own right, but as Diana said, you cannot compete with true love. The King was open about his enlarged prostate diagnosis, a subject that many men find taboo. His cancer came as a shock. But the good he did in being open is likely to save many lives. Unable to attend the Royal Maundy Thursday service in Worcester Cathedral this week because of his treatment, the King delivered a pre-recorded speech where he talked of a special prayer this Easter and expressed his great sadness of being unable to be there in person. He said, "The Maundy service has a very special place in my heart," and recounted the story of Jesus washing his disciples' feet. This was all about service and his dedication to his role being serving the British people. Let's have a listen.
This act of worship here in Worcester Cathedral reminds me of the pledge I made at the beginning of the coronation service, to follow Christ's example, not to be served, but to serve. That I have always tried to do and continue to do with my whole heart. It is my special prayer today that our Lord's example of serving one another might continue to inspire us and to strengthen all our communities. May God bless you all this Easter.
So we need him at the helm. You only need to look at the damage a rapidly revolving door of career politicians can do. Of course, there are many good, but we certainly don't want many more. Getting rid of the royal family would create a vacuum. God knows what would fill it. The world is captivated by our working royal family. They are one of the last remaining traditions in this country and one of the last things that we have left that have put the great in Great Britain. So let's raise our glasses to King Charles. We wish you a speedy recovery and look forward to you getting back to your duties after your treatment. A job you clearly love doing, a job you were born to do. We wish you health and happiness. Long live the King. Right, so just coming up to 8 minutes after 3 o'clock. Before we get started over the next hour, let's introduce you again to my clashers. Joining me today is GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson, also former Tory aide, Claire Pearsall. Right, so here's what's coming up in the clash. Happy Easter, King Charles, as he attends the Easter service, his first royal appearance since receiving cancer treatment, as the Princess of Wales stays at home following her own diagnosis. Then, should church leaders be held accountable for the migrants they convert? I mean, why not? The Home Secretary has warned churches to avoid allowing asylum seekers to exploit the system after it was revealed the Clapham chemical attacker Abdul Azidi converted to Christianity. Next, we'll also be asking, does the union flag put off ethnic minorities? Labour stands firm on being proud to fly the Union Jack flag on leaflets after some opposition MPs claimed that it could exclude ethnic minority voters. Well, just exclude them, but what about the British people who actually, do you know what I mean? What about everybody else? And is it time to reduce arms to Israel? A leaked memo suggests that government lawyers claim Israel is breaking international law. And finally, the controversial children's gender clinic, the Tavistock Centre, finally closes its doors following years of public backlash. Well, that's coming up. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at gbnews. First, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my clashes GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and also former government advisor Claire Pearsall. Right, so I'm going to come to you, Claire. Why not? Let's ladies first.
Yeah.
Although Nigel might say, I'm a lady, I'm a lady. No,
Identify.
You're not. You identify as a lady.
We'll do that one later.
Oh, Nigel.
Starting already. Yeah.
Claire, what do you think then? The King, of course, he couldn't... he shook hands, actually, earlier today as well. I think that was him shaking hands, wasn't it, with people?
Yeah.
And he's going through his cancer treatment. That's very brave.
It is very brave. And I think it's great that we saw him out at the church service. It was really important to him to be with Camilla, and it's important for all those people that want to be able to celebrate with him, want to wish him well, and will go and stand at the church for a quick glimpse of the King and Queen. I think it's a great message that he's getting on with his service, he's doing his duty. Yes, he's going through some treatment at the moment, but as you say, it's a really positive thing. If you start talking about it, other people take account of their own health, you open up a conversation, and that's only got to be for the good. So I wish him a very, very happy Easter.
Yeah, isn't it wonderful, isn't it? The more I see our monarchy, the more I respect them. Nigel Nelson.
Yeah, well, I've agreed with every word you've said and that Claire's just said there. That I think that after he'd skipped the Maundy service, that we wouldn't have blamed him if he skipped the Easter Day service. But his sense of duty meant that he actually turned up. I'm not a royalist, but I am a monarchist. I believe very much that the monarchy is really important to our constitution.
What's the difference?
The difference is I don't like all the trappings that go around the royal family. I think it's really important to have a constitutional head of state who is not a politician. So I like the idea of having a monarchy and somebody like Charles who puts duty first, just like his mother did.
It's wonderful, isn't it, to see, and the power of it as well, because in my monologue, was saying that literally that is one of the last things that makes Great Britain great again. We seem to want to dismantle everything, but this is still here. I think it's an envy of...
but this is my point about the Constitution. I think what we shouldn't do is try and dismantle it. You pull one brick out and the whole wall might fall down. So that means you have to keep the House of Lords for the hereditary principle, to keep the head of state, because that is a hereditary principle. So there's all sorts of things, knock-on effects, but if you want to have a king, don't play around with the other bits at the bottom.
Do you think, Claire, that we should keep a House of Lords and get, that it should be that we have an unelected chamber like that?
I mean, this is a really difficult question because the House of Lords is there for a very specific purpose, which is to scrutinise the legislation coming through from the government, whichever colour of government happens to be in. So I do think that it has a really important part to play. Whether you should stuff it full of just your mates, well, I think that needs reform rather than the actual chamber itself. I would hate there to be an elected chamber. I think that would be the worst of all outcomes. But I don't think we should get rid of it either. I think there should be a limit on political appointees to the House of Lords. I think there have been too many of those over the last 25 years. I think it's been stuffed full of people with very little experience and very little to bring to the role. It is there to be a scrutinising chamber, and I think you need some real experts in it.
Is it, I'm just wondering, is it more Conservative or Labour, the House of Lords?
It's a Labour majority.
It's a Labour majority.
So it always makes me laugh when we start looking... Oh, sorry, no, it's a Conservative majority, that's right, because when you start looking at the legislation that's going through and everyone starts blaming the lefty Labour peers, actually the majority is the Conservatives. So I think we need to look at the makeup of it. I think that crossbenchers are really important and do a really good job, and it should be more about that than necessarily political parties.
When you say crossbenchers, a lot of people might not understand what that means.
That means they hold no political allegiance, so they can work as they see fit with any part of the government, with any part of the opposition. They are there as almost like an independent, I suppose you would look at it, and they work across all parties and they look at legislation from that point.
Looking at the fact that our monarchy is really kind of narrowed down and slimmed down so much, do you think, and I'm going to ask a Harry and Meghan question, I probably shouldn't, but I'm going to, do you think, Nigel, that there would be a place for Harry to come back and work within the royal family?
I think they could. I mean, he obviously needs to reconcile with his family, and there's a lot of bad blood that still exists. But if that reconciliation takes place and Harry wants to knuckle down and become a working royal again, I don't think he's done anything that should stop him doing that.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean. It's the reconciliation bit. It means that you have to apologise for some of the things you've done while you've been in America, apologise for slagging off your own family. He's broken several of the rules along the way, but I regret he went in the first place. I think he should have stayed here, done his duty like the rest of the family does. You know, his aunt, Princess Anne, would be a great example to him. But no, I don't think the door is absolutely closed. It's obviously not very ajar at the moment until actually things calm down.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's made his own bed. He needs to go lie in it. And you can regret that he ever left the country and left the royal family, but he did. And then he said some really unpalatable things afterwards at a family that worked really hard to include him. So, no, go off, live your life as you wish, but don't keep selling stories.
Well, he's going to carry on selling stories. That's how he wishes to spend his life, which is quite sad, really. Well, if you just tuned in, welcome on board. We'd love to hear your thoughts on all the stories we're discussing in the clashes. Get in touch at gbviews@gbnews.com. I was about to give my phone number out. Right, so this is our next story. Now, the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, has issued an Easter message warning churches that they shouldn't allow asylum seekers to exploit the system. This comes after it emerged that the Clapham chemical attacker, Abdul Azidi, convinced a judge that he had converted to Christianity with the support of a Baptist minister. Now, Azidi was able to then gain asylum here in the UK despite a previous sex offence conviction. It's just literally couldn't make this up. A spokesperson for the Church of England said that it is the role of the Home Office and not the Church to vet asylum seekers and judge the merits of their individual cases. And we wrote to the Home Office and they said that they had no evidence to show us in regards to this case. Joining me to discuss, GBNews senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and also former government advisor Claire Pearsall. So, Claire, do you think that perhaps they should... I'll go to Nigel, actually, because I went to Claire last time. Do you think that the clergy or people who allow these people to come in and convert in terms of Christianity should be held accountable for the decisions that they make?
Accountability suggests some sort of punishment at the other end.
Well, that's right. That's what I mean.
Well, the answer is no. I mean, Christianity is a conversion religion. It's part of its job is to try and convert people. We sent missionaries all over the world to go and do just that. When it comes to the specifics on an asylum seeker, I think that the question is the genuineness of the asylum seeker. And what should then happen is during the process of the claim, the Home Office caseworkers should talk to the priest who has sponsored an asylum seeker to check out how genuine that conversion was. I mean, the first thing that happens is if you suddenly try and convert to Christianity, a red flag goes up at the Home Office.
Well, that's what happened here. The red flags may have gone up, but let's remember he was a sex offender as well.
Yeah, but well, there's that too. You may then also consider whether or not we need to tighten up the rules about offences they commit here. He didn't meet the threshold for being thrown out of the country with his sex offence. Maybe he should have done.
I'm sure he did meet the threshold. They just didn't bother doing anything about it. What do you think? Because, look, if you go to a pub and somebody's serving you drinks, even though you're completely trolleyed, and they carry on serving you drinks, they could lose their licence. So I kind of, with that theory, think that if somebody is, you know, willingly converting these people just to hike up the numbers of Christians, do you not think that perhaps there should be some comeback?
I find myself in a really awkward position of actually agreeing with the Church of England to say that it's actually the Home Office's job to vet these individuals, and they are correct. And I think that it's a real slippery slope. If the Home Office start trying to blame other institutions, if it's not the Church of England, it will be somebody else, when the ultimate responsibility for the safety of this country and for looking at these asylum claims is the Home Office and the Home Secretary. So let's not forget that they have the ultimate... they are the ultimate arbiters of the decision-making process. What I think that we do need to look at is the number of people suddenly converting to Christianity, the countries that they come from, and the reasons why they feel they need to do that when they land in the United Kingdom. If they have not had a history of Christianity or even being interested in Christianity in their countries of origin, then I think you need to look at why they've done that now they're on the shores.
But they might be exposed to Christianity for the first time when they come here. I mean, one of the points about often
they can't use it as an excuse as to why
there shouldn't be an excuse to it.
Well, that's what they're doing.
The question is that's what I mean about the genuineness of it. If they are genuine converts, that's a bit different. But if, say, you're on the Bibby Stockholm, where about 40 people from there go to church, that it's the church that has come in and shown them some kindness. They've got interested in the church. Vulnerable people often do. In prisons, it's the prison chapel on a Sunday is often the best attended event.
But in a prison, it doesn't have the same implication, does it? In a prison, it couldn't then be one of the reasons used as to why you can stay in the UK.
But it also begs the question is, well, why have they got interested in Christianity? Why is the church going in? Are they specifically going in to talk to asylum seekers? I think we need to understand that. Why is it that we're seeing conversions to Christianity? You're not seeing it to any other faith, and I'm sure other faith leaders are available to go into the Bibby Stockholm or into places where asylum seekers are. So it feels a little bit like there's a preying on people who are vulnerable, which I think is wrong, and the Church of England shouldn't do that.
You mean it's like a press gang?
Well, it's kind of how you just presented it, to be perfectly blunt. You said that they've come in, they've shown kindness, they've gone in and they've talked to them, and magically here is a conversion for a church that likes to convert people. So, yeah, it does feel a little bit like a press
but if these people are exposed to Christianity for the first time, say they weren't particularly religious before, if they are devout Muslims, it's unlikely that they would convert. But if they're exposed to it and their conversion is genuine, I can't see what the problem is there or why the church is doing anything wrong to encourage them. Where it becomes a problem is if it's active deception on the part of the asylum seeker to try and stay here.
And that's what we need to understand. And you're saying it's OK, this might be their first introduction as Christianity, but if you're on the Bibby Stockholm, how many times are you being immersed into a Christian service? Now, for the majority of people, they go to church on high days and holidays. Some people are a little more devout and will go every Sunday. I'm not suggesting that suddenly an asylum seeker on the Bibby Stockholm is going to go to evening mass, they're going to go to church on Sundays. How much of this immersion into Christianity is driven by the asylum seeker, or how much of it is driven by the Church of England?
Well, it'll be a meeting of minds, won't it? I mean, so this is what I mean about if you've got Christian groups who are moving in to assist people who are confused and certainly vulnerable, that's what I mean about them being exposed to the religion.
But don't you think that that is just... if they are vulnerable, if they are confused, if they need help, then pushing something with a heavy Christian message is only going to lead to one outcome, that person is going to go, well, this must be what I have to do.
Well, they might just take the aid and not the religion. I mean, it's really up to them. I think that these people would have free will to decide what to do.
But I think that we've seen this across the world, that there are certain institutions that use Christianity in order to get aid into places like Africa, and that they will only be allowed to accept an aid package from a particular organisation if they take the word of God, if they convert to Christianity. And it feels a little bit like that's what's happening here. That shouldn't happen with religion.
It does feel like a bit of a setup there, doesn't it? Look, people converting suddenly to Christianity so that they can't be sent back to where they have come from, and that now becomes a barrier. That cannot be how we do things. If you want to convert to Christianity, you can do it, but you should do it once your asylum claim is accepted or rejected. You could do it if your asylum claim is rejected, you cannot convert, I think. And if it's accepted, then do what you like. What do you think? GBviews@gbnews.com. Tweet me at GBNews. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. You are listening and watching their clash. Coming up, is it time to reduce arms to Israel? A leaked memo suggests that government lawyers claim Israel is breaking international law. But up next, Labour MPs warn the union flag could put off ethnic minority voters.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
It's the first time we've had an admission from someone who, at least used to be very senior in the party, saying that this election is not about winning, really, for the Conservatives now. It's about mitigating the losses.
There is broad recognition that this election has already been lost and that it's about damage limitation. And it is really important because it's the difference between whether, if Labour win a slim majority, then the fight is on for the next election. I know it seems silly to look 5 years ahead, but it does make a difference, versus basically accepting that we have 10 years of Labour government ahead.
Having an acknowledgement that the Tories are going to lose and lose badly, disastrously maybe, having that acknowledgement coming from somebody so senior is very demoralising for everybody else in the party, but also doesn't it make it then look rather immoral for them to just drag on right through to maybe November?
Personally, I think Rishi Sunak should name the date now. I think he should name it for October or November.
In terms of reform, if they're only 4 points behind the Conservatives in the latest poll, do we need to stop the narrative, which we have been using legitimately, saying, well, they're doing all right in the polls, but they won't win any seats? Do we need to change that perspective now?
I think it's really difficult to say. It depends on Reform's electoral strategy. There's a lot of evidence that in certain parts of the country with certain demographics, they do have a really good chance. So I think if they target seats in the red wall and other places where there's big disillusionment with the Conservatives and what they'd promised, I can't imagine that Reform are at the stage where they could take masses of seats. It's more about that portion of the vote that they'll be taking away that I think is going to result in that massive Labour landslide.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
I'm Camilla Tominey. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 27 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. We are the election channel. Right, I'm Nana Akua. So Keir Starmer, it is the clash. So Keir Starmer has stated that the Labour Party are proud to fly the union flag following concerns from opposition MPs that it could isolate ethnic minority voters. As if you think that we're so stupid as we'll see a flag and so we won't vote for you. That won't be the reason, Keir. Some MPs deemed that the imagery of campaign leaflets could send the wrong message and alienate people, but others, including former Home Secretary Lord Blunkett, say the flag is important to working-class voters as it shows a sense of pride in the nation. So let me welcome back to my clashers, GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson, and also former government advisor Claire Pearsall. I'm going to come to you, Nigel, because, of course, it is a Labour flag. Also, you know, this is what the Labour Party are saying. What do you think about this?
Well, let's put it into context, really. What the MPs are saying, and these are MPs with big ethnic communities in their constituencies, is that the leaflet should be tailored for constituencies rather than some generic leaflet being sent out to everybody. And the argument is that if you have a leaflet draped in the Union Jack, when it comes through the door, voters may associate it with the hard right, especially if they're an ethnic minority, or alternatively think it's a Tory leaflet, which would not go very well. So that's the point the MPs are making. Nothing wrong with the Union Jack, nothing wrong with the Labour Party flying it, but I think also let's also put into perspective that draping yourself in the flag doesn't make you a patriot any more than not having the flag that you are a patriot. So not to put too much emphasis necessarily on the flag.
God. Claire, I'm sorry, Nigel, the last bit about draping yourself in the flag.
Yeah, I mean, you're in the United Kingdom. There's a general election coming up. The national flag is the Union Jack. I'm unsurprised that politicians want to be able to use it. And actually, all fair play to them, because be proud of the fact this is your country, this is your flag. And if you are going to assume that people from an ethnic background are either not British, and quite a lot of them are. Quite a lot of them were born here. So they are British. So they're not going to be scared. But also, as Nana said, why would an ethnic minority suddenly look at a flag and just go, oh, well, this is terrible, I couldn't possibly look at the leaflet, I must burn it or do whatever? Because, I mean, I think
this word
it's just
proud, I always have a problem with this, that I'm pleased to be British, but I don't feel I can be proud to be British on the basis I had nothing to do with the fact that I am British. So it's not an achievement. It's something like I can't be proud of brown eyes because that's what hereditary gave me.
I just think it's a huge presumption for Labour MPs or anyone to think that an ethnic minority might not have an equal sense of patriotism
absolutely right.
the flag than somebody who is a white person, because ultimately being British isn't about colour. And I think by doing this, they've kind of... I think they've sort of done almost a Joe Biden, if you ain't black, you won't vote Democrat sort of thing. And I find that a bit off.
But what they're talking about is their own constituencies.
But it's very, very stereotypical to say that if you're going to put a flag on there, it's going to make you look very right-wing, and therefore you may not vote for the Labour Party. I think that's a ridiculous idea.
But these are MPs talking about their individual constituencies and saying, why can't we have leaflets that are more targeted for the kind of constituency they represent? And if, you know, if it was something...
but they're focusing on the flag, though. You can have a leaflet that's targeted at your constituents, but if part of that target is removing the flag of the United Kingdom...
No, well, it's not removing it. They want it to be a bit smaller.
Or make it smaller.
Because it goes in and it looks like a Union Jack is dropping on your doorstep. And that's what they're complaining about. They're saying that let's design these things in a much more targeted way.
Well, I think also the very fact that it would put people off because it's a flag then... But I just think that's a ridiculous statement, because it's an election campaign year. People are going to expect
and of course,
a British party to have the flag of that nation.
And this is the United Kingdom, so that's the flag for this country. What do you think? GBViews@GBNews.com, or tweet me at GBNews. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up, is it time to reduce arms to Israel? A leaked memo suggests that government lawyers claim Israel is breaking international law. But first, let's get your latest news headlines. Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you. The top stories this hour. King Charles has made his first significant public appearance since his cancer diagnosis. Joined by the Queen, he smiled and waved as he left an Easter Sunday service at St George's Chapel in Windsor and went on to greet crowds, shaking people's hands. Other members of the royal family were also there, but the Prince and Princess of Wales missed the service as Catherine continues her cancer treatment. Tens of thousands of people turned out to see Pope Francis preside over Easter Mass at the Vatican and the delivery of his Urbi et Orbi blessing from the balcony of St Peter's Basilica. The pontiff, who's been dealing with health problems, used his address to renew his call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, as well as the release of all Israeli hostages. Almost 600 people have been intercepted crossing the Channel this weekend, despite deteriorating weather conditions. It brings the total number of migrants who've illegally arrived on small boats to more than 5,200 this year. That's a third higher than the figure recorded this time last year. A new poll suggests the Tories are on track for their worst general election result. Survation found the party could win fewer than 100 seats, with Labour projected to sweep to power with a landslide victory of 468. The 15,000-person poll indicated the Conservatives would be wiped out in Scotland and Wales and hold just 98 seats in England. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Nana.
Thank you, Tatiana. Coming up, controversial the Children's Gender Clinic, the Tavistock Centre, finally closes its doors following years of public backlash. Next, is it time to reduce arms to Israel? A leaked memo suggests that government lawyers claim Israel is breaking international law. Don't go anywhere.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
Has the NHS killed your relative and then lied to you about it? There is an alleged cover-up culture in the NHS. They lie to you about why your loved one died, about poor care, then bury documents with evidence in them, and they try to silence staff who speak out. This is according to the NHS Ombudsman. There are around 11,000 avoidable deaths every year. 11,000. Someone's mum dies, their children know something dodgy happened, and then they're met with a rotten culture, including the altering of care plans, the disappearance of crucial documents, and complete denials. They lie to you, but they really get away with it because the NHS is like a religion, and people dare not criticise it. You'd be accused of NHSophobia. The annual budget is around £180 billion, and we now have about 2 million people working for the NHS. They cannot keep blaming everything on being underfunded and understaffed. If they're covering up medical negligence, it means the problem doesn't get dealt with and it keeps happening. And that is the fault of the NHS managers, the people who run it. They've got the money for 837 non-clinical staff working at English hospitals on the highest paid Band 9 contracts, which is between £99,000 and £115,000 a year. How many nurses would that pay for? How many junior doctors? And they've got the time on their hands to think about making the NHS the world's first carbon-neutral health service. They've got time to consider whether women in labour should be picked up by an electric ambulance that might have to be recharged en route to the hospital. There are NHS managers with a budget of £180 billion, 2 million members of staff, and they're crying about being understaffed and under-resourced. If they spent more time looking after patients instead of finding ways to cover up avoidable deaths, then maybe we'd have a better health service. Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, where have you been? No, welcome. This is GB News. We are Britain's election channel. I'm Nana Akua. This is The Clash. Now, next up, a Tory MP has claimed that government lawyers believe Israel is breaking international law in Gaza. Alicia Kearns, who is the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, reportedly made the comments at a Tory fundraising event on March the 13th. And in a leaked recording, she can be heard saying that the Foreign Office has received official legal advice that Israel has broken international humanitarian law. But the government have not announced it. They have not said it, and they haven't stopped arms exports. So I'm asking, is it time to end arms exports to Israel, as other countries are certainly looking to do? So joining me to discuss, let's welcome again GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson, and also former government advisor Claire Pearsall. Claire Pearsall, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, I think that we need to understand whether this information is actually correct, because it's a leaked recording from a fundraising event and nobody has verified whether the information is actually correct. So I think that's one part of it. I also think that people should stop leaking this kind of stuff out to the media in the first place. At the moment, the government hasn't said that Israel have breached international law, so we need to be able to help our allies. We need to be able to keep funding Israel so that they can fight against Hamas. Now, there are problems within that whole conflict, and I think the humanitarian aid situation is utterly abhorrent at the moment, and the visuals coming out of people in famine-induced states is not good. And I think Israel need to be held a bit more accountable for the lack of humanitarian aid going through. But when it comes to fighting against a terrorist group, then absolutely we need to be able to play our part in that. Equally, they would be able to play a part and assist us. So at the moment, the United Kingdom and the US are stepping up, helping their allies, which is right. If, and this is a really big if, there is a breach of international law, then we have to look again.
It does seem a bit one-sided, though, that they only focus on Israel breaking international law and nobody's bothered about Hamas breaking international law. And surely Hamas should stop firing the rockets and return the hostages.
Well, of course they should.
If they did that, it would be finished.
Yeah, of course they should. But I mean, but we're not arming Hamas. So the issue is over. So the issue is over whether we should continue arming Israel. Claire's right. It rather depends on whether this is actually true, whether or not there has been official advice to the Foreign Office to say that Israel is breaking international humanitarian law. If they are, and if that advice is genuine, we would have to stop arms sales. That it is a condition of the...
Wouldn't that then be us leaving them to be bombed by Hamas? Because you said we're not arming Hamas, but that's true. But Hamas probably don't need to comply with international law.
Well, they're not.
So well, exactly.
They're clearly not.
If you're only focusing on one side and saying that they're not going along with international law, but you don't care what happens to them, even if you take your arms away, and you are allowing Hamas now to bomb Israel freely.
Well, I mean,
that's what would happen.
We're stuck here with the law that it is a condition of the export licences for arms that the country it goes to does not break international law.
But what about Hamas, though?
We're not supplying Hamas.
Yeah, so if we remove arms from Israel, we are now... What is that, then? We're allowing them to be bombed by Hamas. Is that what you... I'm just wondering, because I'm looking at the conclusion, the ending.
Well, the conclusion...
So then they die.
Yeah,
is that not breaching international law?
No, in fact... I mean,
so you're allowed to leave people armless to die?
Well, you wouldn't leave them armless. I mean, the interesting bit here is what would happen with America. I mean, that we sell about £42 million worth of arms to Israel. America, you're talking about 23 billion. So it's a whole different ballgame. If America takes the same view, Israel's in real trouble. The answer would be, don't break international law.
Yeah, but you're asking something which is an uneven playing field.
Well, no, but
one person, one part, to comply with international law, but the other part can do whatever they like.
No, I'm not saying that at all. The issue is over our arms sales. This is a British issue over arms sales. Hamas is not part of that equation. We sell arms to various people. It's not a very moral industry. We sell £10 billion worth of arms to Saudi Arabia, and they've been used to bomb children in Yemen. What we're talking about here is that in the event that Israel is determined by our lawyers, by our government lawyers, to break international law, we cannot sell them arms because that is a condition of the export license.
So we can allow them to perish by... I'm just finding it a bit odd that we hold the moral high ground on this particular moment, thinking that we're upholding international law, when Israel are fighting as people who are not needing to comply with it, so it doesn't work.
And I do understand your point, but, I mean, Nigel's right with this, that it is part of the export licence conditions that the country they're going to doesn't breach international law. But, I mean, I do get your point, and Hamas are going to be funded by some pretty nasty individuals who care not one jot for international law. Now, I don't think it would get to the point where Israel would have no arms whatsoever, because I think if there was a real serious threat that the UK and the US would remove their exports to Israel, then the Israeli government would have to think long and hard, because, the implications of it are enormous. If you don't have that stockpile of arms, if you cannot fight that war, then, yes, they will be bombed by a terrorist group. So I can understand your point, and I get what you're saying, but I think that sometimes Israel just needs to perhaps look at what is going on, what the lines are drawn in the sand almost, and say, OK, right, we can see, we can change things around, we can do things, we still get the support of our allies, and we can still win this war.
Yeah, but the problem is, I think, and it's easy for us to sit here and say that, is that Israel, even before October the 7th, were being bombed by Gaza, from Gaza. So I know this, because I used to talk to Uri well before that, and in fact, that's why he started talking to me, because of the amount of rockets that were coming from Gaza. The only reason Israel doesn't look like Gaza is because it has an Iron Dome. Because Hamas are constantly firing rockets over to Israel.
That's
and
right.
Obviously, Israel have to retaliate to sort of scare them. So what I think the international community should really be doing is focusing on Hamas and asking them to stop firing, asking them to release the hostages, instead of focusing on Israel, saying, we'll take away your weapons.
Well, no, but what the international community is saying is that Israel has every right to defend itself, but that kind of response must be proportionate. It does have limits. And in the event that they're breaking international law because they've gone over those limits, that rather changes the position.
What are these limits, though? Because Israel doesn't look like Gaza because of an Iron Dome.
Yeah.
Gaza looks like the way it does because it has no sort of aerial protection from rockets.
Yeah.
So what are these limits you're talking about? Because the only reason they're getting bombed in that way is because they haven't invested.
The limit is whether what Israel is doing in Gaza is proportionate to what happened on October the 7th. And in the event that, and I don't know, we can't even get Western journalists into Gaza to report from there because Israel won't allow it.
That's because if they get killed.
Well, I mean, Israel would allow. There are other reporters there from elsewhere, but British reporters can't get in, which they should be able to. They've been trying for ages to do just that. But if you are starving the population deliberately, that would be a war crime, and that would be an example of breaking international law.
Isn't that simply a counterproductive, something that happens as a result of war? I'm trying to think of the word there. That, you know, you're in a war, so one of the things is starvation. You see it in Africa as well. There's plenty of food, but the reason the people are starving is because of civil unrest. So that is a byproduct of war.
But if it's a weapon of war, that is a war crime.
But it's a byproduct, ultimately.
In some respects, yes, but I think if you're going to withhold things like water, electricity, medicine and food, deliberately knowing that civilian populations will die, then that is the breach of international law.
I don't believe that's what's happening. I suspect that it's pretty difficult to get things in there. And also, when they have sent in aid in there, the people have literally killed each other to get this aid. But look,
well, because they're so desperate.
Well, they are desperate, yes, but then I would again go back to Hamas and say, stop firing the rockets and give back the hostages. This could all be over. Well, listen, stay tuned. What do you think? GBViews at GBnews.com. Coming up, the controversial Children's Gender Clinic. The Tavistock Centre finally closes its doors following years of public backlash.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather. We've had some sunshine across the north and the west, but over the next 24 hours it does turn more unsettled. Low pressure dominating the weather yet again over the next few days. We see further spells of rain, heavy showers pushing across the country, some brisk winds later on in the week as well. For the evening time, we do have some heavy showers pushing into central southern areas. We could see some localised flooding here. Met Office warning in force for the evening time, and then overnight this rain pushes slowly northwards. Further rain pushing into eastern areas too, with Northern Ireland and Scotland seeing the driest weather with some clear spells, but the vast majority of us, temperatures remaining above freezing. So a mixed start on Monday. Outbreaks of rain across northern England into central parts and Wales as well. Some of this heavy at times. Brighter skies following across central southern areas, but into the afternoon we'll see some heavy thundery showers developing, some hail possible. Parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland will see some drier weather, some sunny spells, and here temperatures lifting to around 13 or 14 Celsius. Feeling quite cold under the cloud and rain, temperatures in single figures. For Tuesday, we'll see areas of rain across the top and tail of the country. In between, we'll see some sunny spells, but some scattered showers also developing. And it remains unsettled for the week ahead. Further showers and some heavy spells of rain as well, and temperatures just climbing a little.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews at gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, welcome on board. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. It's fast approaching 11 minutes to 4 o'clock. Coming up, the Tavistock, I'm getting this is the one that gets me every time. The Tavistock Gender Identity Development Service has closed for good 2 years after a report highlighted major concerns about the clinic. The review, led by Dr. Hilary Cass, warned that having one clinic was not a safe or viable long-term option. She recommended a number of regional centres for gender services that should be established instead. Now, the NHS Trust responsible for the Tavistock Clinic said it supported the plans and the staff have worked tirelessly and under intense scrutiny in a difficult climate. This comes on International Transgender Day of Visibility, which is today, an annual celebration dedicated to raising awareness of discrimination faced by the community. So let's welcome again to my head-to-head a senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson, and also former government advisor, Claire Pearsall. OK, I think I'll come to you, Nigel Nelson. Tavistock Clinic, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think it's right that it was closed. It is right that regional centres are being opened. There'll be one at Great Ormond Street Hospital in London, one at Alderhay Children's Hospital in Liverpool. They will open in April. There's been some worries about the increase in the number of people who go there. 5,000 children going there for treatment compared to 250 10 years ago.
A bit of a rise, isn't it?
Yeah. So all those things are right. But I mean, the point basically is that the work that Tavistock is doing will continue. It's not as if we've actually stopped it. Some things from the investigation have happened, like body-changing hormones have been banned or will be banned, both in the private sector and the NHS, and the NHS will no longer give out puberty blockers.
But can't you get them privately, Clippers?
Yeah, you can get them privately, and I think that's half the problem. I think it's an astonishing amount of young people who are seeking this kind of treatment for gender dysphoria or many other reasons. And I think that we need to perhaps be a little bit careful. I mean, the Tavistock Clinic has not covered itself in glory. It started off as quite a positive invention. However, it rushed people through into transitioning when they perhaps weren't entirely ready. It handed out puberty blockers with very little thought to the individual and what follow-up care was being taken. So I'm pretty pleased that actually this has been closed. I think we need to be careful with young people's lives. We need to listen to what they say, listen to what their concerns are, but not rush into something which is fundamentally going to change them as an individual for the rest of their lives. I don't think a child, and I stress this, that child should make these decisions. I think if you're over 18...
What age?
I think you need to be over 18. I think if you're going to make long-term physical changes to your body, you need to be an adult. And if we consider an adult to be 18, that's what it must be. I think you can look at therapy, you can look at the reasons why somebody is unhappy, but I think these lasting changes should not be doled out to children.
Nigel?
I don't think there should be an age limit on it. I think it depends on the individual.
So you think 13, 14 is fine? People can make that decision?
I think that it depends on the individual. Again, I wouldn't want to put an age on it because otherwise someone says, oh, well, what do you think about a 4-year-old? And obviously that would be ridiculous.
Well, they have been talking about that, remember, in Scotland.
But if you're becoming a teenager, if you are diagnosed with gender dysphoria, I think it's for the medical professionals to decide what is the most appropriate treatment in that situation.
It's madness because, listen, most people who go through this and those who didn't go through the change then kind of recalibrate after puberty. I think we are medicalising something that is a natural thing, puberty, where I think young people determine and learn about their own sexuality, about their gender and how they want to progress in life. And, of course, that's the development of all your sexual organs and things like that. It's too soon to be working out or thinking that you're a stereotype, because let's be honest, a gender or you know, is a stereotype of sex. So what a man might be doing or what a boy or girl might be doing, it's completely...
But I'd rather treat them as not as stereotypes, but as individuals, that you actually treat each person in this situation as an individual and treat them as such.
But we also know that the teenage years are really, really difficult. They're really complicated, and that's why I think that you should hold off on that treatment, because you do change your mind.
Oh, well, I was just about to say that the Tavistock Centre, we'll read that later, but this is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Still to come, the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is it time to call a general election? What do you think? We've heard both of the speeches from Sir Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak, their Easter messages, which I have to say were very uninspiring. But what do you think? Is it now time to just sort this out and call a general election? Let me know your thoughts, but first, let's get an update with your weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather. We've had some sunshine across the north and the west, but over the next 24 hours it does turn more unsettled. Low pressure dominating the weather yet again over the next few days. We see further spells of rain, heavy showers pushing across the country, some brisk winds later on in the week as well. For the evening time, we do have some heavy showers pushing into central southern areas. We could see some localised flooding here. Met Office warning in force for the evening time, and then overnight this rain pushes slowly northwards. Further rain pushing into eastern areas too, with Northern Ireland and Scotland seeing the driest weather with some clear spells, but the vast majority of us, temperatures remaining above freezing. So a mixed start on Monday. Outbreaks of rain across northern England into central parts and Wales as well. Some of this heavy at times. Bright skies following across central southern areas, but into the afternoon we'll see some heavy thundery showers developing, some hail possible. Parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland will see some drier weather, some sunny spells, and here temperatures lifting to around 13 or 14 Celsius. Feeling quite cold under the cloud and rain. Temperatures in single figures. For Tuesday, we'll see areas of rain across the top and tail of the country. In between, we'll see some sunny spells, but some scattered showers also developing. And it remains unsettled for the week ahead. Further showers and some heavy spells of rain as well, and temperatures just climbing a little.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Has the NHS killed your relative and then lied to you about it? There is an alleged cover-up culture in the NHS. They lie to you about why your loved one died, about poor care, then bury documents with evidence in them, and they try to silence staff who speak out. This is according to the NHS Ombudsman. There are around 11,000 avoidable deaths every year. 11,000. Someone's mum dies, their children know something dodgy happened, and then they're met with a rotten culture, including the altering of care plans, the disappearance of crucial documents, and complete denials. They lie to you, but they really get away with it because the NHS is like a religion, and people dare not criticise it. You'd be accused of NHSophobia. The annual budget is around £180 billion, and we now have about 2 million people working for the NHS. They cannot keep blaming everything on being underfunded and understaffed. If they're covering up medical negligence, it means the problem doesn't get dealt with and it keeps happening. And that is the fault of the NHS managers, the people who run it. They've got the money for 837 non-clinical staff working at English hospitals on the highest paid Band 9 contracts, which is between £99,000 and £115,000 a year. How many nurses would that pay for? How many junior doctors? And they've got the time on their hands to think about making the NHS the world's first carbon-neutral health service. They've got time to consider whether women in labour should be picked up by an electric ambulance that might have to be recharged en route to the hospital. There are NHS managers with a budget of £180 billion, 2 million members of staff, and they're crying about being understaffed and under-resourced. If they spent more time looking after patients instead of finding ways to cover up avoidable deaths, then maybe we'd have a better health service.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Here's what else is coming up. In the Great British Debate this hour, I'll be asking, has Easter lost its meaning? Are we losing faith? All of that in just a moment. Then for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to call a general election? I've said that twice, but I got it the wrong way around, but don't worry. Paul Dudridge will be live, giving us the latest from what's going on across the pond. Then at 5, in my outside guest, I'll be speaking to lots of people, but one lady in particular, a lady called Fiona McKenna. She's one of the campaigners for Sex Matters. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. It's 4 o'clock. These are the top stories. King Charles has made his first significant public appearance since his cancer diagnosis. Joined by the Queen, he smiled and waved as he left an Easter Sunday service at St George's Chapel in Windsor and went on to greet crowds. Other members of the royal family were also there, but the Prince and Princess of Wales missed the service as Catherine continues her cancer treatment. Our royal correspondent Cameron Walker says this was an important moment for the monarch.
King was very much determined to attend this very important event in the Christian calendar. He himself, of course, is head of the Church of England, so he would have had a very strong religious feeling needing to be there. But of course, there's another reason, and that is to provide a message of reassurance to the British public following the Princess of Wales's separate cancer diagnosis and her treatment.
Meanwhile, the Archbishop of Canterbury has wished the King and Princess of Wales well during his Easter sermon at Canterbury Cathedral. Justin Welby encouraged the congregation to pray for Charles and Catherine and praised their dignity as they both undergo treatment for cancer. Pope Francis has presided over Easter Mass at the Vatican. Tens of thousands of people turned out to see the pontiff and the delivery of his Urbi et Orbi blessing from the balcony of St Peter's Basilica. Pope Francis, who's been dealing with health problems in recent weeks, used his address to renew his call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, along with the release of all Israeli hostages. Well, in his Easter message, the Prime Minister paid tribute to the work of churches and Christian communities across the country.
Happy Easter, everyone. This weekend, as people come together to celebrate and reflect on the message at the heart of the Easter festival, I want to pay tribute to the incredible work of Christians in this country. The churches, charities, volunteers and fundraisers who live the Christian values of compassion, charity and self-sacrifice, supporting those in need and demonstrating what it means to love thy neighbour.
Sir Keir Starmer also posted on social media saying it's a time for optimism and new beginnings. The Easter messages come as a new poll suggests the Tories are on track for their worst general election result. Survation found the party could win fewer than 100 seats, with Labour predicted to sweep to power with a landslide victory of 468 seats. The 15,000-person poll indicated the Conservatives would be wiped out in Scotland and Wales and hold just 98 seats in England. In other news, deteriorating weather conditions have failed to deter migrants in the Channel. Almost 600 people were intercepted in small boats this weekend, despite strengthening winds. It brings the total number of those who've arrived illegally to more than 5,200 this year. That's a third higher than the figure recorded this time last year. People smugglers are being accused of putting their lives in danger by launching overcrowded dinghies that can't handle large swells. And the Energy Secretary has warned that Labour's dangerous net zero plans would leave Britain at the mercy of China. Labour has pledged to convert the country to clean power by 2030, 5 years earlier than the Conservatives. But Claire Coutinho told The Telegraph the plan would leave the UK over-reliant on Chinese-made metals, cables and batteries, just as Europe was weaning itself off Russian oil and gas. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Nana.
Thank you, Tatiana. It's just coming up to 5 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We are Britain's election channel. I'm Nana Akua. Has Easter lost its meaning? Are we losing faith? I can remember when I was young, I went to a Roman Catholic convent school run by nuns, and before that, a Catholic secondary school for a year. Easter was a big deal. The religious message was central. The Lord has sent his only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, who died on the cross to save mankind. And then, of course, the resurrection. It was all about sacrifice and renewal. Yes, of course, I love the Easter eggs. My favourite, definitely the white chocolate ones. In fact, I will confess to eating the white chocolate Easter egg that Lizzie Cundy gave me yesterday. I polished it off before I went to bed. But I knew what Easter was about. But why does it feel like everywhere I look, Christian traditions are being marginalised for every other faith in this country? It feels like the UK is losing its way. Take the BBC, our publicly funded broadcaster. They've been blasted and accused of turning its back on Christian Britain after dropping its coverage of the traditional Easter service at King's College, a show which has been part of the channel's festive programming for well over a decade, dropping it in favour of other religious coverage. And the BBC's flagship radio show, Desert Island Discs, that sparked uproar after it invited a prominent atheist on their Good Friday edition. What were they thinking? Professor Alice Roberts, a scientist and the Vice President of the Humanists UK charity, refused to take a Bible with her, saying, "Well, I'm not having the Bible because I'm a humanist." Why feature her on Good Friday? It makes no sense. Many Christian groups were clearly upset and claimed the Beeb were trying to minimise the religion's role in British culture. The chief executive of Christian Concern, Andrew Williams, stated the BBC's motto, "Nation shall speak peace unto nation," is biblical in origin. She went on to say, the more the BBC seeks to forget and minimise the primary role of the Christian faith shaping this nation, the darker all things become. But it's not just them. The other week, Network Rail were forced to remove an Islamic message on the departure board at London's King's Cross, wishing Happy Ramadan. Again, nothing wrong with the message, but I doubt they've got one up this weekend saying Happy Easter. I mean, maybe they have, but I doubt it very much. These days, we're even scared to use the word Christmas, just in case we offend others. I've lost count of the number of times Christianity has been overshadowed to accommodate other religions. There's nothing racist or xenophobic about wanting to uphold the Christian traditions of this country first. We are, after all, a Christian country. By all means, incorporate other religions into this country, but we shouldn't lose track of our traditions, which I believe must be serviced first. Although I can see why many are losing faith. I mean, it doesn't help when you've got Christianity being used as a stay-in-the-UK card, with some church leaders appearing to willingly convert known sex-offending migrants to the faith to assist their asylum claims. Abdul Azidi, A most recent example of this, he went on to attack his partner and her children with a corrosive substance that he accidentally got on his own face and wound up in the Thames. He apparently, despite converting to Christianity, had a Muslim funeral. Whilst we live in a multi-faith society, and I respect all religions, we are a Christian country, and it's time for us to put Christianity first. So before we get stuck into the debates, here's what else is coming up today. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to call a general election? Rishi Sunak and his Labour counterparts, Keir Starmer, released their Easter messages. Extremely dull, both, I must say. As a poll reveals, the Prime Minister could lose his seat in the upcoming general election. Then at 4:50, it's Worldview. We'll cross live to Los Angeles with Paul Dudridge, the host of the Politics People podcast, to get the latest on what's going on with Donald Trump and his New York civil fraud case. Then stay tuned at 5. It's this week's Outside. The Director of Campaigns at Sex Matters, Fiona McCain, I can't say it now, McInerney, will be joining us live to talk about trans athletes in women's sports. That's coming up in the next hour. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at gbnews. I asked Christine, is it machinations? I don't know. She's the one that told me it was. All right, let's welcome again to my...
That's what it looked like.
Well,
with a guess.
Well, thank you. I hope I've said that right, Fiona. She will correct me, I'm sure. But let's welcome again to my panel, author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Christine, you've come as a little Easter chick.
I have. Well, it's
very bright, I must say.
When it's, I love this
beacon.
I love this show. I'm not a ballista.
A ballista beacon.
A ballista beacon. Yeah. I suppose I do look like it. Well, I've got navy trousers on, so I suppose but you can't see that. So no, I just think what to wear. So you just grab something. I thought Easter. I've got 2 bright yellow tops, and I chose this one.
Well, you've outbrighted me. Yes, you've outbrighted me today.
That is difficult to do.
Oh, Christine, bless you. So I'll start with you. What do you think? Are we losing our way and kind of minimising our own faith in this country?
100% we are. And my personal view is that the BBC deliberately chose that lady, I forget her name, to go out on Good Friday because they want to rub our noses in it. Those of us who want to uphold the Christian tradition and those of us who want to hang on to the fact that this is a Christian country. A person who doesn't help hanging on to that, of course, is the Archbishop of Canterbury, who does his best. Well, he does. Well, I mean, my husband calls him the Archbedwetter of Canterbury. He does his best.
Listen, he's not here to defend himself, so, you know.
No.
Is he not?
No, he isn't. He should.
He was in the green room.
But come on, what did he do? He was straight out of the gate, shutting down all the churches during COVID. He doesn't force people away from the church, but he does not encourage people to come to church. All his politicking and goodness knows what. But no, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. And too many organisations like the Beeb and other people seem to think they have to bend over backwards to be fair to other religions, forgetting that this is a Christian country and the Christian faith should be first and foremost in this country. And never forget that the faith that is the most persecuted throughout the world are Christians. People just assume that because we're all fine in this country, we are, but in other parts of the world, the Christians are horrendously persecuted. And we need to stand up for... I'm a Christian, we need to stand up for our faith, and I think...
Do you go to church?
Appalling. Well, I should have been
No,
at
you
church.
don't, do you?
That's a great question.
Excuse me, let me finish.
That's a great
I should have been at church this morning, but our church is... because I have quite a long way to travel to come here for the pleasure of being with you, I can't do both. I couldn't go to our Sunday church at 11 o'clock in Norton Parish Church because I had to catch the train.
Oh, but listen, the BBC would argue that they are not doing it deliberately, as you kind of suggest, but that they're doing this to open the door to other faiths and other... It seems a bit odd, though, on Good Friday. Danny Kenny?
Unless you're a devout Christian, and the reason I said that's a great question is because unless you are a devout Christian, I didn't realise you were a devout Christian.
I didn't say I was a devout Christian. She asked me if I went to... I'm not a God squadder. I don't force it down other people. I believe...
Are you a practising Christian?
Yes, I mean, if you
don't need to go to church to be a practising Christian.
I was just going to say, if by that... No, of course you don't. I believe and I try and live my life. I fail, but I try and live my life by Christian principles.
But let's get
OK, all right. Well, so you pray. You pray to God.
She probably doesn't.
Yeah.
OK, well, that's fine. Well, you've got a dog in the race, if you like, or a dog in the fight. But a lot of people, Easter is just irrelevant because they're not devout Christians. Compared to Christmas...
I know.
Compared to Christmas, now, I was brought up a Catholic...
That's just as irrelevant.
No, but culturally, it's far more significant than Easter. Culturally, as a society, Christmas is far more relevant.
Anyway, carry on.
Easter. OK, so are we becoming... What's the question? Are we becoming less religious as a society?
Well, are we losing our way, you know, because we are a Christian country?
Very much so. Fewer people... OK, well, it's so basic, but and blunt. Fewer people are going to church, fewer people are practising Christianity. So, yes, we are losing our faith, and we can look at why we're losing our faith, and I don't have the answer to that. I was driving down this morning, or this afternoon, I was reading some statistics.
What was you driving?
No.
He wasn't reading.
It was outside. I was watching the football outside, and I was also just doing a bit of research just about half an hour ago. And you know, Islam is the fastest growing religion in this country. In London, I didn't realise this, but there's like 1.5 million Muslims in London, in the capital. Birmingham, probably proportionally just as many. Coventry, proportionally just as many. Now, Islam is a religion where people practice it more wholeheartedly than Christianity.
That's why we've become so sort of lethargic towards Christianity, and also people like Justin Welby, who's sort of put people. I think he puts me off Christianity.
He does. I think he.
Okay. Well, I think people are. I think people are coming to the conclusion that maybe there is no God. And ideologically, it's easier to come to that conclusion if you're from a Christian household than from an Islamic household. Because Islamic households ideologically tend to be a lot stricter when it comes to upbringing their children. Whereas, if you like, Western Christianity and those values associated with Western Christian households, that they will allow people to say, well, actually, I'm going to be an atheist or I'm agnostic, and you're not allowed necessarily to do that.
Well, I suppose what you're saying there is because a lot of the Islamic countries have theocratic regimes, which is where only one faith is allowed to be practiced.
We're secular.
Where we are a multi-faith society, so other faiths would have to be hidden under the carpet.
But importantly, we're secular. Aren't we?
Well, nobody is saying that other faiths should be crowded out. What I'm trying to say is that this country is a Christian country, and that should be foremost. And yes, we don't have the leadership. The Christian Church doesn't have the leadership that would be desirable. Let's hope that somebody will come along shortly. But I just find it, to me, I find it wrong that whichever station it was puts a message up for Happy Ramadan, doesn't think of putting a happy Easter.
Well, they might have done it now, but I don't think it's something they would have done.
Came via Paddington, I didn't see anything. I'll have a look on my way home.
I'm sure that at Christmas time, those message boards are full of Happy Christmas.
I don't know.
I bet you they are. The difference
it'll be Happy Festive Season.
The difference is the thing that I didn't like about that message was that it was it was almost like preaching a passage from the Quran. Okay, it wasn't just a Happy Ramadan or whatever it's called. It was like a piece of literature, like lift straight from the Quran. And that's what I didn't like.
I wouldn't be bothered about that as long as they did the equal thing with Christianity, and I don't see that. What I see is a more restrictive approach towards anyone who wants to even show their Christian faith. So remember that woman who wasn't allowed to wear her cross, but yet you could wear a turban, or you could wear whatever your religious thing is, or you could wear a burqa, or whatever you wear, your veil over your face, or whatever, but you weren't allowed to wear the cross.
Where was that?
What they're trying to do is squeeze out Christianity, and you mentioned exactly the lady who couldn't wear the cross, but and the boy who scuffed the Quran. Look what happened to the school. I can't remember the details of that now, but anybody who even slightly offends the Muslim religion is hauled over the coals, whereas you can say what you like about Christianity. Nobody worries about it. It is being squeezed out gradually.
That's because people are frightened of the consequences of criticising Islam.
Yeah,
there are no consequences of criticising Jesus Christ or Christianity. No one's going to come round and
beat you up,
lop your head off.
But that's not necessarily the truth. That doesn't necessarily happen, does it?
No, it can. That's the thing.
But we do have the issue of Battle in Spen, where the teacher...
Exactly. For 3 years he's been hiding.
Still hiding.
And I tell you what, if he came back in town, I bet you he'd be violently assaulted. You wouldn't get that with Christianity.
I bet you he'd be killed.
He potentially could be killed.
No, you can't say that, but that's obviously... He's obviously fearing his life, which is why he's hiding.
There are historical precedents where people have criticised Islam. And look at Salman Rushdie. He wrote a book criticising Islam. He's lucky to be alive. And there's been a fatwa on his head for 20 years. And you wouldn't get that with Christianity, would you?
Well, it doesn't look that way, but I think it's important that we do...
It's a peaceful religion.
Well, I don't know about that. No, hold on, because there have been many wars that started through Christianity as well. So you can say that, but there are, Christianity, there was a lot of violence many years ago.
Oh, OK. In current day, I would claim that Christianity is a more peaceful, a more live and let live, and a less...
But the word is tolerant.
Tolerant, yes.
Okay,
Live and let live. It's more tolerant.
So strict interpreters of Islam are intolerant. There is no tolerance.
That's
Vast majority of Muslims are tolerant.
But you could say that about strict interpreters of Christianity. They will probably be intolerant as well. So, for example, if you were to say gay marriage or any of the things that those who strictly follow the code of Christianity, then they will stay with that code. So some of those people are also intolerant.
You're right, but there are no consequences for criticising.
Well, there may well be. No, I don't think
I gave you a couple of examples. Justin Welby.
They don't go around killing homosexuals, do they?
Well, no, but, you know, I don't... Is that something that... We haven't seen that specifically happen in this country with Islam either, have we?
Haven't seen what?
Well, you said
homosexuals
killing people, you know...
Not in this country, but they are in other countries.
Well, I mean, look...
You're thrown off a tall building in some countries.
Well, that's what...
Sack put over their head.
Well, that is what people have said, but I don't... I mean,
I think
there's video evidence of it.
There is plenty of hard video evidence.
I think that...
Not in the UK, though.
But ultimately, let's come back to the question with regard to the fact that we are not focusing on Christianity in this country.
Well, we're not. I mean, we have to talk about the festive season at Christmas time. We have to talk about... We don't have to. Gesture eggs. You get Iceland, the food retailer, who have ticks on the top of their hot cross buns. Apparently, they still have the hot cross ones available, but they thought those might offend their non-Christian customers, so they had one with a tick. The hot... Oh, you know,
I think that's a problem with this country in general, that we seem to be... We're very accommodating, which is great, but then we'll bend over backwards to accommodate, but then we don't seem to want to accommodate our own thing. And I think that, for fear of being called racist or xenophobic, or we're worried that someone will say, oh, well, you're giving undue prevalence to your own thing, and I think it's time we're proud of even, you know, being British and the tradition.
We've just allowed ourselves to be trampled over in so many ways.
God bless you. God bless you too. On the most holy of days, God bless you.
Thank you, Danny Kelly.
You're welcome.
I don't know what that's about.
What is he about?
I don't know what's wrong with him.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you.
If you just tuned in, welcome. It's just coming up to 21 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. Coming up, it's World View. We'll cross live to the United States to get the latest on what's happening there. But next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is it time to call a general election? I've got a poll up right now on X asking you that very question. Send me your thoughts. Email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at GBNews.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
This story caught my eye. Lloyds Bank, right, they own the insurance company Scottish Widows. They have now issued some kind of suggested guidance about which word to try and avoid upsetting people or perhaps be as inclusive as possibly can be. One of these words is widows, which really caught my eye because of the amount of stupidity. If you own a brand literally called Scottish Widows, you can't then be saying that the word widows is triggering and offensive. Anyway, because it is so ludicrous, I need to move over from that part because I want to talk about the broader issue. So many organisations, they have what they call ESG. I'm going to bring a graphic up on the screen in case you're not familiar with what this is. But it's a sense of kind of government, and I would say it's almost like a spine. It underpins so much of what business does today. It stands for environmental, social and governance. And it's around things like how does a business perform when it comes to their environmental impact? How diverse are their employees? How diverse is their board? And so on and so forth. Do you think ESG is a force for good and much needed within business or not, Ben?
It is the introduction of systemic institutionalised prejudice in the United Kingdom, which is going to damage dreadfully our economy, but also our culture, our cohesion as a society, and it's undermining, again, coming back to it, the nation-state that is the United Kingdom. ESG has to be ditched.
Strong words. Judita, do you agree with him?
I don't agree, because I think that with ESG, when you have them, what you're having an increase in is specialists in ESG being introduced into companies to kind of imbricate it into how the company functions. If you're moving in a direction of making your company's functionality be optimized in a way that is inclusive of anyone from any background who has the qualifications to occupy that position, that is a good thing.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 24 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's time now for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, is it time to call a general election? Prime Minister Rishi Sunak struck a very positive tone in his Easter message, giving the impression that all was rosy in the world.
Happy Easter, everyone. This weekend, as people come together to celebrate and reflect on the message at the heart of the Easter festival, I want to pay tribute to the incredible work of Christians in this country. The churches, charities, volunteers and fundraisers who live the Christian values of compassion, charity and self-sacrifice, supporting those in need and demonstrating what it means to love thy neighbour.
However, the latest polling suggests that his Easter message could not just be Rishi Sunak's last one as Prime Minister, but also as an MP. The seat-by-seat analysis predicts that the Conservatives will win just 98 seats at the next election, with Sunak himself less than 2.5 points ahead of Labour in his own Richmond constituency. Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer's Easter message was shamelessly political as he seeks to position himself as the Prime Minister in waiting.
I think faith is really important. I think that's a place where people can invest a lot of themselves and comfort and hope. And a sense of security. Well, we have to speak the nation as it is, not as we'd like it to be, and give that basic reassurance and hope that things can change, and a sense of renewal, which is how do you actually take your country forward so that you can genuinely say in 10 years' time, it is a better place now than it was.
So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to call a general election? But before we do that, just to say that in our discussion earlier, obviously the discussion reared into the path of extreme elements of Islam, and obviously that is not representative of many who support that religion in this country. Right, so debate the subject. I'm joined by former government advisor Claire Pearsall, GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson, broadcaster and lawyer Andrew Eborn, and political editor of The Express David Maddox. David Maddox, I want to start with you, because you wrote a very interesting piece in The Express. What are your thoughts on this?
On having an election, I have to say, I wondered, just looking at the Prime Minister there giving his Easter message, if at the back of his mind he was hoping for his own miraculous resurrection, because that's obviously what he's trying to buy time for, which is why we're sort of delayed until probably the autumn for a general election. Frankly, for people like me who sit in Parliament each week and watch on Wednesday afternoon as the MPs flee for the exit doors, we can see that very little is going on, and that this government has very little left to give. And, you know, probably it is time for election, and arguably it was time for an election when he became Prime Minister.
Yeah, that would have been wise for them to do that there, but obviously I don't think they would have won that either. I think a lot of them were buying time. Andrew Eborn.
Very simple. The survey done by Survation talks about starvation, effectively, for the political party, the Tories. 98, just 98 seats they're predicting, a stonking Labour majority of 286. So clearly, if the Tories want to do something, I reckon that in the next few months, things are going to get better for them. You're going to see more results. They talk about sort of stop the boats, and if you don't stop the boats, it's going to stop the votes. So you need to see success there. Inflation is already much much lower than it was when he was predicting he was going to reduce it from 11%. It's clearly significantly better than that. That was an easy victory. So if he's working on the basis, he's got all the way effectively until the end of January, when the very, very final date the election has to be. And I would bide time, because at the moment, trust is at an all-time low. And I say that trust comes in on foot and leaves on horseback. But people are voting against it. As you say, it wasn't a very inspiring Easter message from either of them, quite frankly. So people are actually voting against something rather than positively for something.
Claire Pearsall, is it time to call a general election?
I don't think we need to be hasty and call it immediately. I think he did have the opportunity to run it in May, but has decided that's not the time. I don't think we need to worry about the summer. It's going to have to be the autumn. It's going to be miserable. Whenever this is, it is going to be miserable for the Conservative Party. I don't think the polls will stay anywhere near as far apart as they are at the moment. Polls will always tend to close naturally when it comes up to a general election. And you also need to bear in mind we need an opposition who has got the numbers, who is going to hold a government to account. So I don't think anybody needs any party to get wiped out. But I do think the general public are losing patience with Rishi Sunak and the government as a whole, because they are not giving anybody any hope. They're not giving people a reason to vote. But equally, the Labour Party now has everything to lose, because it needs to come up with the policies that it's going to put forward. It's simply not good enough to just be not the Conservative Party.
Nigel Nelson.
Well, I'd like to see the Conservative Party put out of its misery as soon as possible, and the nation as well. So the earlier the election comes, the better. They were obviously planning to go for May the 2nd, but the plan wasn't working. They didn't get the flights off to Rwanda. The budget has not done anything to change Tory fortunes, with the latest poll putting them nearly 29 points behind Labour. But I don't see anything getting any better. On the basis of that, let's have an election as soon as possible.
What about, Andrew? They were talking about a league table for migrants. I don't know whether you heard about that they published a league table of the best migrants or the least worst behaving ones.
Yeah.
I mean, could that be a policy clincher that would help them do better, perhaps, in the...
I think they have to have success somewhere, is the reality. And as I say, things will get better. I guarantee in the next few months the gap between the parties is going to close. And I would remind everybody that effectively, you remember what happened with Trump versus Clinton. And everybody went to bed assuming that Clinton had won, and wake up in the morning and there's Donald. I do think we're going to have one of those moments. And if the Tories can hold it out and get success in those sort of pledges, the 5 pledges, I think you'll find that fortunes will turn around.
Are you serious?
I'm providing a bit of balance on that sort of basis.
Well, David,
fact, as I often do.
Final word to you, David.
Look, I think the problem was, Nigel referred to it there, was that he wanted to go on May the 2nd, and basically his MPs put a gun to his head and said, no, you're not, because we don't want to be out of a job sooner rather than later. But frankly, there's some very good advice coming from a former cabinet minister, Nigel and I know quite well, David Mundell, which is, if you look at history, if you wait to the last minute, the result is even worse. It's always even worse than it was going earlier. And the temptation is to hang on for as long as you can. But frankly, they are heading for a disaster. I mean, John Curtis says 99% Labour are likely to win. But the Conservatives, the way things are going, are heading to a complete catastrophe that we've never seen before in history.
Wow. All right. Well, Andrew Eborn, is it time then, yes or no, to call for a general election? Yes or no?
Well, I think the answer is no. Enough is enough, being Easter.
Nigel Nelson, is it time to call?
Yes.
Claire Pearsall?
No.
David Maddox?
Yes.
Right, well, there you go. Mixed views. What are your thoughts? Thank you so much to former government advisor Claire Pearsall, GBNews senior political commentator Nigel Nelson, broadcaster and lawyer Andrew Eborn, and political editor of The Express David Maddox. Thank you. Right, so you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, we'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, is it time to call a general election? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Next up, though, this week's Outside, I'm joined by Fiona McKenna from Sex Matters. She'll talk about the closure of the Tavistock Clinic. But first, let's get your latest news weather.
Anna, thank you. The top stories this hour. King Charles has made his first significant public appearance since his cancer diagnosis. Joined by the Queen, he smiled and waved as he left an Easter Sunday service at St George's Chapel in Windsor and went on to greet crowds, shaking people's hands. Other members of the royal family were also there, but the Prince and Princess of Wales missed the service as Catherine continues her cancer treatment. Tens of thousands of people turned out to see Pope Francis preside over Easter Mass at the Vatican and the delivery of his Urbi et Orbi blessing from the balcony of St Peter's Basilica. The pontiff, who's been dealing with his health problems recently, used his address to renew his call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, as well as the release of all Israeli hostages. Almost 600 people have been intercepted crossing the English Channel this weekend despite deteriorating weather conditions. It brings the total number of migrants who've illegally arrived on small boats to more than 5,200 this year. That's a third higher than the figure recorded this time last year. A new poll suggests the Tories are on track for their worst general election result. Survation found the party could win fewer than 100 seats, with Labour predicted to sweep to power with a landslide victory of 468 seats. The 15,000-person poll indicated the Conservatives would be wiped out in Scotland and Wales and hold just 98 seats in England. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Nana.
Thank you, Tatiana. It's fast approaching 35 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. Coming up, Worldview will cross live to Los Angeles to speak to Paul Duddridge about the latest on Donald Trump and his election bid. But next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is it time to call a general election? Given Rishi Sunak's precarious position in the polls, I've got a poll up right now on X asking you that very question. Cast your vote now.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
Now, the massive debate back across the pond is NATO. Yeah. Everyone's talking NATO every day. It was your comments about them not paying enough, not paying 2%. And you said this, you said it again recently. You made a comment, well, the Russians can do whatever they want if these guys don't pay. Well, that's now being used.
Well, they can use it. I don't really care if they use it, because what I'm saying is that's a form of negotiation. Why should we guard these countries that have a lot of money? And the United States was paying for most of NATO. And when I went there, and I already had it out with them, and now they stopped paying again. But now they're paying because of those comments that you saw 2-3 weeks ago. The question was asked by the head of a major country in front of everyone else, 28 countries at the time, including us. They said, so if we don't pay our bills, are you going to protect us from Russia? I said, you mean you're delinquent? You're not paying the bills? Yes. Nope, I'm not going to pay you. We're not going to do it. We're not going to defend you. If you're not paying your bills, we're not going to defend you. It's very simple. And hundreds of billions of dollars came flowing in. Now, if I say, yes, I am, they're not going to pay their bills. Why would they do that? NATO has to treat the U.S. fairly, because if it's not for the United States, NATO literally doesn't even exist. But they took advantage of us, like most countries do.
If they start to pay their bills properly and the club is fair, are places like Poland defended? Will America be there?
I believe the United States was paying 90% of NATO, the cost of NATO. It could be 100%. It was the most unfair thing. And don't forget, it's more important to them than it is to us. We have an ocean in between some problems. It's more important for them. They were taking advantage, and they did. They took advantage of us on trade, and they took advantage on
So if they play fair, if they start to play fair, America's there?
Yes, 100%, 100%.
Thank you.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. If you've just tuned in, welcome on board. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are Britain's election channel. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, earlier we were talking about Christianity and we're still coming to our debate. Rachel says, I disagree that people aren't practising Christianity. Our whole society is based in Christianity. For example, democracy, the judicial system, the law is Christian, etc. If you're abiding and believe in the fundamental basis of the way we live our lives, then you are practising Christianity every day. Thank you for that. Stephen says, my church Easter service this morning was packed. St George's in Stockport, packed. In fact, most times I attend Holy Communion, it's pretty full. I think Christians are rising up. Good. Margaret says, my family and I went to a Roman Catholic church this morning, as usual. There was standing room only. Even the entrance porch was packed, and it's a big church with 2 aisles. It was heartening to see so many young men there helping older people find a seat. That's lovely, and hopefully they give up their seat as well, not just help them find it. Good. Thank you very much for that, Margaret. Right, it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, is it time to call a general election? As Prime Minister Rishi Sunak stuck a very positive tone in his Easter message, paying tribute to Christians and the contribution they make to society. However, the latest polling suggests that this Easter message could just be Rishi Sunak's last as Prime Minister. The seat-by-seat analysis predicts that the Conservatives will win just 98 at the next election. And with Rishi himself less than 2.5 points ahead of Labour in his own Richmond constituency, it doesn't look good. In the meantime, Sir Keir Starmer's Easter message was shamelessly political, and he's seeking to be Prime Minister. It did sound like a Prime Minister in waiting. The Labour leader spoke to a group of Christians about their faith and the impact that it had on their vision for Britain. So, at the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time now to call a general election? Well, let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Danny Kelly, we'll start with you.
Is it time to call an election? Well, it's just delaying the inevitability of the Tories' ruination, really, isn't it? I can't see Sunak pulling any rabbit out of a hat in the next... When's the last deadline? So
it's a lovely Easter metaphor, isn't it? Rabbits out of the hat. We noticed...
I think that the latest he can call it, or the latest we can have one, sorry, is January next year. I mean, it is just delaying. It's like someone on death row. It's just, you know, trying to beg for more time. At some point, he's going to get the call from the state governor to say that all of his appeals have been lost and he's going to go and get fried in a chair.
Oh, Danny!
Not literally, by the way.
Honestly.
He doesn't mean it literally.
Of course not.
Somebody,
that's a
horrible
No, but
image.
you know, OK, it is a horrible image, you're right.
Well, it is a horrible thing.
Yes, but metaphorically, the Tory party are dying. And I was driving in listening to your show, Nana, and it's directly to do with the impact that Reform are having.
Do you think... No, I think it's directly to do with the abysmal job that they've done.
True. That's why Reform are there, because of the abysmal job. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
But there are so many people who are going to vote Reform who would have voted Tory.
Well,
that's their own fault, I think.
Half of me thinks, let's have the election tomorrow and get it out of the way, and then we can all get on with the rest of our lives. The other half thinks, oh, I simply can't bear the thought of an election. Let's put it off as long as possible, and then maybe it won't happen, but of course it will. No, you're right, Nana. The Tories don't deserve to win, and... I don't think they will do as badly as some of the polls are predicting at the moment. I mean, I may be wrong, but I think you'll find that at the 11th hour, quite a lot of people will look over the abyss and they'll think, actually, no, I do not want a Labour government. For a variety of reasons, each to their own. So I don't think it will be quite as bad. I think it'll be pretty cataclysmic, but I don't think it's going to be this total wipeout. The thought of the Tories losing in Richmond is quite extraordinary, but does it really matter to Rishi? I mean, he's going to sugar off anyway. That's probably unfair to pretend that it doesn't really matter to him. It does, because it's a massive humiliation. And, you know, Danny, to use your analogy of somebody on death row, if you were on death row, every single day would be a plus. So every day you can put off the inevitable. You can understand the thinking behind that.
Yeah,
so I don't think he'll go until the autumn.
Some people would say that if you're on death row, you might as well just get it over and done with. Living in a cell 24 hours a day on death row is pretty
But he's
miserable.
not. He's living in Downing Street. He's having a wonderful time.
He's a millionaire. He's not in a cell.
Money's got nothing to
Prime Minister.
Money's got nothing to do with it.
Money's got nothing to do with the inevitability of this national disgrace.
The life of the Prime Minister is pretty good. You swan around with interesting people and you do interesting things, etc. He won't want to give that up too quickly.
Also, the kudos of being Prime Minister, but then not so good. All right, well, listen, this show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voices, their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. Let's go to Kidderminster. Let's have a chat with John Reid. John Reid, talk to me. What do you think? Is it time now for this general election? Do we need to call it?
If I'm living in hope, I'm with Danny 101% on this one, Nana. If I had my way, we would have the election tomorrow. In fact, we would have started with a new government long time ago. He's on borrowed time, isn't he? Is he getting anything right? Not that I can see. Not, why should we hang on to this man who's watching the demise of the country, in my opinion? You talk about kudos and all the rest of it. I don't think that comes into it. I think he's just full of well, I can't say it on TV, can I? But
I think we know where you're going with it.
I would like to see him gone, Nana, no question about it.
Who do you want in there? Keir Starmer?
Well, I personally would vote for Keir Starmer, yes, but I'm not one who thinks he's the most wonderful thing since sliced bread. But he's got such low opposition, hasn't he? He's got such a poor government to battle against that why would he not do a better job? I think I could probably do a better job than Rishi. So I'm just in favour of change. But politics are cyclical, and I think it's time the cycle went round another turn, and away we go.
Well, I'm not really a Labour supporter myself, and I was before this one. I voted Conservative. I think the one before that I did vote for Tony Blair. I actually listen to their policies and decide on what they're doing. But I can't vote for either of them, John. Thank you so much. Lovely to talk to you. That is John Reid. He's our great British voice. Just coming up to 45 minutes after 4 o'clock. If you've just tuned in, thank you for your company. Welcome on board. Coming up, the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is it time to scrap net zero? We'll be asking that in the next hour. But next, Worldview. We'll get the latest from what's going on in the States.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather. We've had some sunshine across the north and the west, but over the next 24 hours it does turn more unsettled. Low pressure dominating the weather yet again over the next few days. We see further spells of rain, heavy showers pushing across the country, some brisk winds later on in the week as well. For the evening time, we do have some heavy showers pushing into central southern areas. We could see some localised flooding here. Met Office warning in force for the evening time, and then overnight this rain pushes slowly northwards. Further rain pushing into eastern areas too, with Northern Ireland and Scotland seeing the driest weather with some clear spells, but the vast majority of us, temperatures remaining above freezing. So a mixed start on Monday. Outbreaks of rain across northern England into central parts and Wales as well. Some of this heavy at times. Brighter skies following across central southern areas, but into the afternoon we'll see some heavy thundery showers developing, some hail possible. Parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland will see some drier weather, some sunny spells, and here temperatures lifting to around 13 or 14 Celsius. Feeling quite cold under the cloud and rain, temperatures in single figures. For Tuesday, we'll see areas of rain across the top and tail of the country. In between, we'll see some sunny spells, but some scattered showers also developing. And it remains unsettled for the week ahead. Further showers and some heavy spells of rain as well, and temperatures just climbing a little.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 till 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, welcome. This is GB News, we are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. It's time now for World View. And we're heading to the United States now to speak to the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Dudridge, about the latest political news from the United States. So, Paul, welcome. Right, now I want to start with Trump. He's richer than ever. What? I don't get it.
Trump is richer than ever. So, look, last Sunday, it was very sort of tense, shall we say. Trump had to come up with $500 million. And where's he going to get that money from? He floated Truth Social, which is his kind of Twitter knockoff. When he was banned from Twitter, he created his own platform. It floated on the New York Stock Exchange this week, and it's worth something like $8 billion, 5 of which is his. He's made like $5 billion. He's now actually genuinely, finally acknowledged in the top 500 richest people in the world. So he's gone, once again, he's done it. I mean, never bet against Trump. He has now increased his net worth just this week with, I think, a 56% ownership of Truth Social, which has been floated. He's got another $5 billion to play with. It's hilarious.
But he doesn't have many followers on there, though. It's not like it's not Twitter or anything like that.
Oh, are there any other internet companies that are valued completely beyond the wealth of Croesus that actually have no followers? That is part of being in the world of the internet, apparently. You can have like 2 followers and my nan and be worth billions of dollars. He should benefit from it as well. It's his turn. But yeah, it's not that big or successful. But you know, a lot of people are talking about it. Do you remember that story with GameStop? When people kept buying stock and it went up and up and up and up in a kind of rebellion against Wall Street. I don't know if you remember that story. Yeah. It's turned into one of those stocks. People are buying it to support Trump and to slightly cock a snook at the New York Stock Exchange. It's hilarious. But yes, he's done it again. He's basically got a website that's worth $8 billion. It cracks me up.
That's incredible, isn't it? I mean, it goes to show the support that he has, but also the fact that the American public are not buying this weaponising of the legal system to try and scupper him and try and stop them from actually electing him as their president. It's really amazing to watch from here. What about this story about the publisher who's pulled out of a book about Joe Biden because apparently books about him just don't sell?
One of the guaranteed ways to make money in the United States is to get the rights to do the book of the president. You know, it's like Obama's book, Clinton's book, even Hillary's book, anyway. So Simon & Schuster, I think they did the deal in 2021. It's like this great, the American president, all that kind of thing. They've pulled out because they just go, Biden books don't sell. But bearing in mind, this president is the most popular president in history. He's gained more votes than Obama, and yet it's just not there on the ground. It's almost as if maybe the figures aren't completely as honest as they say, but I cannot even speculate. But yeah, a publisher, this is where the rubber hits the road, when people actually have to hand over money because like they're actually giving advances and promotions and etc. for books in this case, and they're going like, do you know what, we'll probably leave it now. And they are probably leaving it now. Can I just point out, the thing you just said though, the American public aren't buying it. A poll this week showed that 93% of people that will vote Trump will vote for him even if he's convicted of a criminal offence. Of course. And that's just what they're prepared to tell pollsters. So that's where we are. You're absolutely 100% right. Yeah. But yeah, so Simon & Schuster have seen the light and just gone, yeah, we ain't going to shift these books. No. So I think they've got like an order of like 1,000 books or something in a population of 330 million, you know?
That's pretty bad, isn't it? Percentage-wise, that must be 0.0000 something.
Oh, yeah.
Now, what about Trump? Because his bond for his New York civil fraud case was like 500 million or something, like $500 million or something. But apparently it's been cut to 175 million.
Yeah, we got cut off last week. The last card he had to play was an appeal. and he went and appealed the amount of the bond that he was expected to put forward. Okay, so they wanted $450 million. And fortunately, one is protected in America by the Constitution, and he was able to appeal and say that this was an egregious fine. This was a punitive bond when he was trying to actually just appeal his case. And so it's been cut down to 175 million. So his wealth has not only gone up 5 billion, his liabilities have gone down another, what, 270 million? It's like, this is, again, it's Trump's week. It's Trump's week. So yes, he now has a smaller bond to pay. He did a really cool thing. I have to say, you've probably seen it. He's walking away from the reporters and they're going like, what assets will you have to put up for this bond, Mr. Trump? And he turns around to the camera and just goes, cash.
Top Trump. Apparently, though, according to Biden, it's Trans-Visibility Day and it's not Easter Day. I mean, it is actually Trans-Visibility Day today as well, but it is also Easter.
Yeah, please don't call it Easter. Not around my house. It's Trans-Visibility Day, okay? And that's the important thing. But look, this is not just some scurrilous story that's like, you know, it's orchestrated to be controversial. You know, the White House did put out, I went and fact-checked this before we started, 29th of March, they put out a big, long statement about the fact it's Trans-Visibility Day on this day. They could have just moved it. They could have just said it after, and I hope you all had a nice Trans-Visibility Day. The thing is, at the same time, there's an Easter egg hunt at the White House every year, and kids come and decorate eggs and roll the Easter eggs down the south lawn. But this year, the kids have been banned from putting religious symbols or messages on the eggs, on the kids' decorated eggs. It's these two things coinciding is what I think has got a lot of reasonably religious Easter people up in arms. It's an absolute affront again. It's like we do a big statement about trans-visibility and we actually prevent any religious iconography, religious messaging on Easter eggs. And by the way, America, they don't even know about chocolate eggs. It's the weirdest thing. They don't have to. All they have is these painted eggs, which I think they're getting shortchanged. But anyway, they're not even around.
You have those in Africa, and they're boiled eggs. There's no chocolate going. Listen, it's always good to talk to you, Paul Dudridge. Thank you so much. That's Paul Dudridge. He's the host of the Politics People podcast. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online, and on digital radio. Still to come, my outside guest. She's going to talk about trans men in women's sports. But first, let's get an update with your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather. It's been fairly sunny across the northern half of the UK. We've seen increasing cloud in the south and we're going to see further rain push in over the next few hours. But looking at the bigger picture, low pressure dominates at the moment. It does mean further showers and rain is on the way. We've got some heavy rain this evening across southern parts of England, and this pushing slowly northwards into the Midlands and Wales as we head into the early hours. Thicker cloud and rain also pushing in from the North Sea to affect northeast England. Generally a little drier across Scotland, Northern Ireland. Here some clear spells, and for most temperatures remaining above freezing. So it's a mixed start to Monday. We've got cloud and outbreaks of rain across this central swathe of the UK. Some brighter skies to the north of it and to the south, but it's to the south where we'll see some heavy showers developing as we move through into the afternoon. Some hail, some thunder in there. We could see some local disruption. Cold under the cloud and rain, particularly northern England, southern Scotland, 9 or 10 degrees. In the best of any sunny spells, either side of this, up to around 14 or 15 degrees. For Tuesday, a mixed picture. We'll have sunny spells and scattered showers across much of the country. However, low cloud, rain and drizzle will affect parts of Scotland. Then later on in the day, further wet and windy weather starts moving into the southwest. It remains unsettled through into Wednesday and Thursday with further rain at times, temperatures around average.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
It's a remarkable story, isn't it?
Amazing.
Extraordinary. And also, she was unflappable.
apparently, the Princess Royal.
She's
just
brilliant.
refused to get out of the car and said, I'm not going anywhere. Extraordinary. Well, Jim Beaton was awarded the George Cross for protecting the Princess, and delighted to say joined us now, along with the former head of Royalty Protection, Di Davis. Jim, you won't remember, but I met you some time ago at the Imperial War Museum when Princess Anne was opening an exhibition to do with the George Cross, and you were there reunited with her. And you told me then what great admiration you had for the Princess, cool under fire, but you didn't do so badly yourself.
It was probably my job, and also I had a wee bit of police training, not very much, but a little bit, whereas Princess Anne had nothing, and yet the way she displayed it, you would have thought she'd been highly trained to deal with any type of that situation.
Even though you'd had some training, you took 3 bullets for the Princess. You effectively stood between her and a deranged gunman.
Well, I was supposed to be a protection officer, really, so I just tried to fuddle about. You must remember that back in 1974, there was no communication, and we were extremely lucky that Michael Hills, who was outside Clarence House and nearby, had got one of the fast police radios, or radios on his shoulder, so he was able to send a message out. Otherwise, we would have just been relying on the good old public to phone in and say there's something happening.
Yeah.
So times have changed drastically.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It is 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Here's what else is coming up in this hour. In just a moment, my outside guest will be looking into the issue of transgender athletes in sport with the Director of Campaigns for Sex Matters, Fiona McInerney. Then for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to scrap net zero? And in the Sunday supplement for me, my panellists will look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. The top stories. King Charles has made his first significant public appearance since his cancer diagnosis. Joined by the Queen, he smiled and waved as he left an Easter Sunday service at St George's Chapel in Windsor and went on to greet crowds. Other members of the royal family were also there, but the Prince and Princess of Wales missed the service as Catherine continues her cancer treatment. Our royal correspondent Cameron Walker says his appearance will help reassure many people.
King was very much determined to attend this very important event in the Christian calendar. He himself, of course, is head of the Church of England, so he would have had a very strong religious feeling needing to be there. But of course, there's another reason, and that is to provide a message of reassurance to the British public following the Princess of Wales's separate cancer diagnosis and her treatment.
Meanwhile, the Archbishop of Canterbury has wished the King and Princess of Wales well during his Easter sermon at Canterbury Cathedral. Justin Welby encouraged the congregation to pray for Charles and Catherine and praised their dignity as they both undergo treatment for cancer. Pope Francis has presided over Easter Mass at the Vatican. Tens of thousands of people turned out to see the pontiff and the delivery of his Urbi et Orbi blessing from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica. Pope Francis, who's been dealing with health problems in recent weeks, used his address to renew his call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, along with the release of all Israeli hostages. In his Easter message, the Prime Minister paid tribute to the work of churches and Christian communities across the country.
Happy Easter, everyone. This weekend, as people come together to celebrate and reflect on the message at the heart of the Easter festival, I want to pay tribute to the incredible work of Christians in this country. The churches, charities, volunteers and fundraisers who live the Christian values of compassion, charity and self-sacrifice, supporting those in need and demonstrating what it means to love thy neighbour.
Sir Keir Starmer also posted on social media saying it's a time for optimism and new beginnings. The Easter messages come as a new poll suggests the Tories are on track for their worst general election result. Survation found the party could win fewer than 100 seats, with Labour predicted to sweep to power with a landslide victory of 468 seats. The 15,000-person poll indicated the Conservatives would be wiped out in Scotland and Wales and hold just 98 seats in England. Almost 400 migrants crossed the Channel today as weather conditions continue to deteriorate. Over both days this weekend, Border Force officials intercepted 16 small boats carrying 735 people. It takes the total number of those who've arrived illegally to more than 5,400 this year, a third higher than the figure recorded this time last year. People smugglers are being accused of putting their lives in danger by launching overcrowded dinghies that can't handle the strengthening winds and large swells. The Energy Secretary has warned that Labour's dangerous net zero plans would leave Britain at the mercy of China. Labour has pledged to convert the country to clean power by 2030, 5 years earlier than the Conservatives. But Claire Coutinho told The Telegraph the plan would leave the UK over-reliant on Chinese-made metals, cables and batteries, just as Europe was weaning itself off Russian oil and gas. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Nana.
Good afternoon. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And in this hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course, it's yours. As ever, we debate, we discuss, and at times we disagree, but no one is cancelled. Joining me today, as ever, broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Still to come each Sunday at 5, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP, or someone who's had an extremely interesting career. We talk about highs, lows, lessons learned, and what comes next on the inside, on the outside, in fact. Today, I'm joined by the director of the campaigns at Sex Matters, Fiona McAnena, about her work raising the alarm about biological males in women's spaces. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to scrap net zero? The Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho claims that Labour's net zero plans could leave the UK vulnerable. And me and my panel will be looking at some of the other big stories coming into the newsroom, including a new jab on the NHS which could prevent dementia. As ever, email me, gbviews@gbnews.com, or tweet me at gbnews. So, just coming out to 6 minutes after 5, and as you know, every Sunday at 5, I'm joined by someone who's had an extremely interesting career. We take a look at life after the job. We talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. Now, my guest today has been a leading voice in raising the alarm about biological males in women's spaces. And for 5 years, she's worked with Fair Play for Women, a group that campaigns to protect the rights of women and girls in the UK. She led their sports campaign, meeting with UK and international sports federations in a bid to ensure that only biological females can compete in women's sport. Her work has become even more crucial in the recent years as the female category in many sports has continued to be opened up to biological males who identify as women. She continues to be a fierce advocate for female athletes, highlighting why sex segregation matters in sports in her current role as Director of Campaigns at Sex Matters. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Fiona McInerney. Fiona, welcome. Well, that was a big old intro. So talk me through why you got involved in this particular era, why you ended up being involved in campaigning for women's spaces.
Well, I'm sort of an accidental campaigner. I think a lot of us are, because when the government was trying to change the Gender Recognition Act in 2018 to be self-ID, meaning that anyone could just request that they change their birth certificate from male to female or female to male, I started to see some problems with that. And then I started, once I was aware, I started seeing it everywhere. I started hearing about things that were happening in sport, in prisons. You might remember there were stories of women being sexually assaulted and even raped in women's prisons by men who were in there claiming to be women. Now, many people may genuinely feel that, but if there's one person I wouldn't trust, it's a convicted rapist, you know, when he says he feels like a woman and he's entitled to be in a women's prison. So in 2018, all of that started to be kind of in the media a little bit. It's kind of gone off the media after that. The media, I think, got a bit nervous, but by then a number of us had started to realise we had to push back. And I was working with Fair Play for Women, who mobilised the response to the Gender Recognition Act. We got that stopped, but, you know, there are so many areas still where people simply seem to feel they have to accept that if a man says he now feels like a woman and wants to be treated as a woman, that he has the right to have that. And Sex Matters, the group I'm with now, we simply say everyone's human rights matter, that person's rights matter, but so do mine, so do yours. And there are some times when we can't pretend that a man's a woman. Sport is a big one of those, but there are others. And so now that's the work that I focus on.
Because, of course, today is Trans Visibility Day. And we were talking about Leah Thomas. Now, this is obviously something that's happening in America, where this is clearly a man. He's in women's sports. But as you rightly pointed out earlier, that it's not just the sport itself where it's unfair for women. It's actually all the things around it as well.
Yeah, so Leah Thomas was very high profile because he was a very average swimmer, and suddenly he was a national champion in America because of competing in a women's event. We had our own sort of Leah Thomas moment here with a cyclist called Emily Bridges, who'd been a male champion in Britain and then wanted to be in the women's team. But the area that I really focus on now is that at all levels of sport here in the UK, we're hearing from women and girls who are being forced out because they can no longer be confident of fair or safe sport. And you know, it's not just on the playing field. It's if you're going to go into the changing room and you can't be sure there isn't going to be a male in there. For some women, that's enough to drive them away. You know, that no one should have to explain why she wants privacy from the other sex, but we do hear from women. It can be their religion, it can be some trauma in their childhood, it can be teenage girls can be very self-conscious. There are so many reasons. And so a measure that sports call inclusive, which is letting males who identify as women into women's categories, we're finding is actually excluding women and girls because they're driven out of sport. They lose their place, they're afraid of being injured on a football field, and they just don't want the discomfort of having to share changing rooms with men.
Well, I don't understand why this has become a thing, because to me it's quite clear that if a man is a man, a woman is a woman. If a man wants to identify as a woman, the first thing I would ask is, what is a woman? Because it doesn't feel to me that they can ever answer that. What is a woman then? Is it some... People say it's a feeling, it's a this, is that... No, it's not. It's a biological reality. Otherwise, what is a woman?
Yeah, well, that is a big question. And I'd also say, what's a man? And the fundamental truth is the reason we have a separate category in sport and in many other places like prisons is because male and female bodies are so different. You know, female bodies can do amazing things. You know, we can gestate and give birth to a baby. But because we're geared up for that, even if we never do it, our bodies are different from male bodies, and we just cannot produce the same power, the same speed. You know, if you put a man and a woman of similar size and age together, he can punch more than twice as hard as she can. So that's why we separate male and female in so many walks of life.
Well, why do you think so many... Because this isn't just men who are enabling this. There are many women who enable this as well. And I don't understand why they can't see why the separation is there.
Yeah, I think that you're right. When people say, oh, men made these decisions about sport, it's women too. I've seen that. I think there are a couple of reasons. One is that there's huge pressure on women to be kind and to be accommodating. You know, people will say, well, there aren't that many trans women, as they'll call them, meaning males who identify as women. There aren't that many. Why can't you just include them? And what they're really saying is, those people matter more than you do. Their feelings matter more than fairness for you. So I think there's huge pressure on women, and we're socialised to be accommodating. I also hear women saying, well, you know, we're just as good as men, we can cope. And of course, we may be just as good, but we're different. So we still need separate categories. So it's been quite a battle to try and re-establish the right of women to have what men have, which is fairness.
Are we making headway with this? Because it feels like we move forward and then there's some other ridiculous case of a man who then says he's a woman and then everyone's going along with it and you're like, it's just not, the man is not a woman. Except you can be a trans... I mean, some people actually object to a trans woman being called a trans woman, and actually it should be a trans man if they're a man identifying as a woman, or a trans person.
Well, people are very confused. You're quite right. People are very confused by the language, and this is another battle on this front. It's why language matters, because if I can't sit here and say that person is male, he has a male body, and that's why he doesn't belong in women's sport or a women's swimming session or a women's changing room, if I can't use those words, man and male, we can't have the conversation. And that's one of the pressures, of course, that we're under, is not to say those things. People say that's really unkind. Why do you have to be so mean? I don't want to be mean, but I'm entitled to express that view, and I need to be able to say it to protect women and girls. And I say to those people, why are you unkind to women and girls? Why don't you care about them? You know, this isn't just competitive sport. It's also women and girls wanting to go swimming, go to female-only gym sessions. And if they can't be sure that that's what they're going to find, some of them are just dropping out, and that is unkind. That's not inclusive.
Should women decide then? So I think it might have been a swimming event, or it was at darts. It was darts actually, where the women refused to compete. Do you think that is the way forward? When women say, well, we're not going to compete?
Yeah, that's been happening a bit. It's been happening in pool as well, where there's a legal case going on. I think it's really asking a lot of women to give up their own opportunities just to make a point. They shouldn't have to. It shouldn't come to that. I think any woman or girl should be free to say, I'm not going to do that. It takes courage. They risk really some quite nasty criticism, but often they find that they also get a lot of support. But I don't think we should be expecting women to boycott their own category in order to restore fair rules. It's really up to policymakers and decision makers. And I'd like to see the government step up and say, come on, you know, the reason we have a female category is for the people who otherwise would have no chance of winning things because male and female bodies are so different. So no men in that category. It doesn't matter how they identify. Let's accommodate them in an open category. There are solutions. The big sports, you ask where we are with this now, the big sports in the world, the biggest Olympic sports, which are athletics, cycling and swimming, they've all recognised this and they've restored fairness. And because they've done that at world level, the UK federations have done that too. But we're still waiting on an awful lot of other sports.
This is absurd, really, to me. It's so straightforward. I'm confused as to why it's become an issue and a confusion, and why it's become some sort of insult that when you call a man a man. I mean, of course, we had India Willoughby being upset when she was called a man, because she is a man. Not to be horrible to her, but biologically she is a man. So even though I'm honouring the fact that I'm calling her a she, but ultimately I'm being forced to go along with something that I don't necessarily agree with. Not that she's trans, I disagree with that, but I disagree with having to lie to my own eyes about what somebody is.
Yes, and when we talk about sports or prisons or refuges, we say it's not because you're trans, it's because you're male, that you do not belong in the category or the place that was designated for females. And it's not an insult to be male, it's just a fact. But I think that when there is a high-profile case, like, you know, the Leah Thomas or the Emily Bridges, those sports tend to realise that they can't get away with it because it's making them look bad. And I rather fear that we're going to have to see that in a few other sports before we get some sense. And I want to mention the boat race to you, because I know you featured it yesterday. So British rowing here in the UK has re-established that the female category is only for women and girls, and there's an open category for everyone else. Great. For everyone, in fact. That is not the case at world level. So those women we saw racing yesterday on the Thames, some of whom will represent Great Britain, and one of whom has represented the US, they could, when they go and compete internationally, they could end up facing crews from other countries that have a male rower in there. And, you know, that means that male is 10% stronger on average than an equally competent, equally fit, equally skilled woman. And in fact, in America, the US rowing team accepts men who say they're women in its women's team.
It's just ridiculous, isn't it? I'm sorry. You know, look, I respect whatever you choose to identify as, but I don't think people should be forced to agree that that is what you are when the biological reality says something different. It is very odd. I don't understand why we're going in this direction. Very briefly, what are your thoughts, and are you concerned about a Labour government coming in? Because they seem a lot more giving to this whole debate of self-ID.
Well, they say the self-ID thing's gone away, so let's wait and see. But what I'm describing in sport is another form of self-ID. These people don't have a birth certificate saying they're female, but they still have rules that say they're allowed in. So we want to see the Labour government follow the guidance that the sports councils in the UK have given, which is to say it isn't fair, and you really should be thinking about what fair rules are, and they need to find a bit of courage. These governing bodies.
So if people want to find out about Sex Matters, is there somewhere they can...
Yeah, they can follow us on X at sexmatters.org, or they can go to sex-matters.org, our website.
Thank you so much, Fiona. Really good to talk to you.
Thanks.
That is Fiona McAnena. She's the Director of Campaigns at Sex Matters. Well, coming up, Supplement Sunday, where my panel and I dissect some of the stories from the week. But next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is it time to scrap net zero?
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Can the Church of England not spend their money as they wish?
The Church of England can do amazing things for this country and for the world, and I'm not sure why it's chosen to focus on this specific issue. You know, one of the causes that I've always thought the Church was very good at were things called almshouses, which were basically houses that would be built on church estates for the needy. Not only did they want to spend £100 million on this fund, that they wanted to spend £1 billion on reparations as well. Well, why not spend 100 million or £1 billion on a new generation of almshouses, as opposed to just helping one group of people, black British people? Why not just help all people in need?
Alex?
Well, I just don't understand what the Church of England is trying to do. It's on its deathbed.
Congregations have reduced. I mean, deathbed is maybe...
Well, look, if we look over 20 years, it's dramatically lower than it used to be. And a lot of criticism from actual Christians come from the values that the Church of England are now propagating. And Justin Welby has a lot to answer for, because, you know, not only are we seeing in the news this mass conversion of illegal immigrants to a gay mass system in the UK, but now we're seeing them spending money... And as Albie actually pointed out correctly, in a way that doesn't really benefit broader society, it benefits a very small group of people. So I just don't know where it's going to end. This committee has also said £1 billion's not enough. It's 100 million, sorry.
Church commissioners are now hoping for a target of £1 billion.
I mean, it's woke nonsense, isn't it?
You could make the argument that this is charity. Justin Welby's job is to be a virtue signaller, is it not?
Should charity discriminate? I mean, that's what he's saying. We're only going to give this to people from a specific skin colour or background. I don't think that's very Christian of them.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon. It's just gone 22 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. Don't forget as well, you can download the GB News app for free. It's now time, though, for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is it time to scrap net zero? The Energy Secretary, Claire Coutinho, claims that Labour's net zero plan could leave the UK in a very vulnerable position with China. And in an interview, the Cabinet Minister said that Labour's plan to move towards clean energy 5 years before the Tories could mean the country would be reliant on metals, cables and batteries from China. That's as the Shadow Net Zero Secretary Ed Miliband said that the Tories have failed on their green agenda over the last 14 years. He said that many people have now moved abroad for work as the country has become reliant on imported energy infrastructures. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to scrap net zero? Well, to discuss this, I'm joined by Deputy Director of Net Zero Watch, Andrew Montford, journalist and author of Not Zero, Ross Clark, Director of Climate Media Coalition, Donica McCarthy, and also the Senior Meteorologist at the British Weather Services, Jim Dale. All right, so I'm going to start with you, Andrew Montford. What are your thoughts?
Yes, it's definitely time to scrap net zero. Net zero is doing enormous damage to the economy. I mean, we can see this in the wholesale deindustrialization of the country over the last decade or two. We're down to our last blast furnace. We're down to our last aluminium smelter, which is being kept alive by subsidies and so on and so on. Claire Coutinho is really talking nonsense. I mean, the 5-year difference between the Conservatives' policies and Labour's policies really is nothing at all. They're both wedded to this religious dogma that we have to decarbonise the economy, and they are going to run the country into the ground unless they are forced to turn back.
Well, they don't seem to want to. Let's go to Donica McCarthy. Donica, what do you think?
Happy Easter, Nana. Good to see you. Net zero is our economic and patriotic duty to carry out. The idea that we wouldn't act to protect Britain's food security and literally our borders from rising sea levels is nonsense. And as regards Montford, his Global Warming Pulse Foundation have waged war on Britain, weaning ourselves off the international global oil market for decades, and that has caused real problems. For example, they opposed the insulation program for people's homes, which has left millions of people of Britain's poorer. And Ross Clark's attack on the cheapest form of energy, which is wind energy, meant we cost Britain billions of pounds extra last year. So acting on net zero has reduced bills for people in the UK. Our lighting is cheaper, our heating is cheaper, our driving is cheaper.
Even if you end up being reliant on China for the minerals that we need and the resources, because that's where we're heading. I mean, let's put it down. You know, you can talk about Ross and everybody else, but even if it means that we have to rely on China to get all that stuff.
Well, the thing about the rare metals is quite hilarious.
Why?
Because actually the Tory government has presided over a system that dumps 99% of the rare metals in Britain's electronics. We dump 99% of it. If it's a national security measure, she should be putting in place a recycling system that captures that 99% and stop us being dependent on China. The reason why China is ahead on rare metals is because they invested in rare metals and in renewables development, production in the northeast.
Do you mean that they went into Africa and bought all the mines and bought a load of land there and started exploiting the earth earlier? I want to go to Ross Clark.
What I meant is that they invested in the production capacity that we failed to invest in, and so we are 20 years behind because of Global Warming Policy Foundation.
That may be true, but the outcome is the same. We rely on China. Ross Clark.
Yeah, well, I think you've got to ask yourself, why is China ahead in manufacturing all this stuff? And because one of the very important reasons they are ahead is they have much cheaper energy. Why do they have cheaper energy? Because as well as investing in renewable energy, and I've got nothing against renewable energy, by the way, they continue to invest in new coal plants, and they have made an absolute priority of energy security and a cheap energy policy. The US as well, they've got net zero, they have an ambition to get to zero carbon emissions. But look, what have they done? The US has unashamedly pursued a policy of energy security and cheap energy. And, the result of that is that US industries are paying 1/4 as much for their gas and electricity as British and European industries are doing. And surprise, surprise, what's happening to British industries, European industries? They're going offshore, taking their carbon emissions with them because they simply cannot afford to operate in Europe. And just look at it, BASF, German industrials giant, 2 years ago said we're not going to invest any more in Europe because the energy is too expensive. The net zero policies are pushing up the price of energy too much. They're investing 10 billion plant in China instead. And the Jim Ratcliffe the other week, the INEOS guy owns Britain's largest oil refinery and chemicals industry throughout Europe. He said that Europe will have no chemicals industry in 20 years' time because of the cost of energy, because of net zero policies are pushing up the cost of energy and pushing up the cost of regulatory compliance. We're going to lose our chemicals industry.
Well, let me bring in Jim Dale. Let me bring in Jim Dale. He says we're going to lose our industries, chemical industries and things like that, Jim.
Yeah, we won't. That's just scare tactics.
Why won't we?
Because we won't. Look, we haven't mentioned what the elephant in the room is so far, and that is climate change itself and why we're actually doing this. And I think sometimes that gets lost. So as I stand here and you sit there today, we've got Eastern Europe, we've got Southeast and Eastern Asia, all of those areas, plus others in the very recent past at record temperatures, blazing away. And I don't just mean missing it by a little bit, actually 2, 3, 4, 5 degrees past there, and we haven't even hit the summer yet. So let's make this absolutely straight. These things are there for this movement is there for a reason, and there's only going to be two parties that have got the potential of forming the next government. And that is the present Tory party, very unlikely, and the Labour Party. So it doesn't matter what Ross and what James say, it's going to happen, and that's a prediction.
So you're okay? So you're okay with the notion that we will be reliant on China? Because, I mean, this is not even, this isn't to do with parties or anything like that. The fact is that they're further ahead. They've invested in all the minerals that we need. We will need to rely on them. You're happy with that?
Well, if we have to be reliant, and not just reliant on China, but probably other countries as well, and hopefully some of those countries will be reliant on us if we get our act together, then so be it, because there's a more important thing that I've just mentioned, that if we don't act, we're going to be in serious trouble. And that is the reason for net zero, or you might call climate mitigation. Is anybody against climate mitigation?
Well, Andrew Montford, let's come back to Andrew and ask him, because Andrew, he's saying that literally at all costs, it doesn't really matter. We've got to do this because of climate change, even if we are reliant on China. That's in summary what you're saying, Jim, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, at all costs, kind of, it's proof that it's a religious belief rather than a rational belief. In a rational world, you do a cost-benefit analysis, and the costs of global warming mitigation outweigh the benefits. I mean, we get this constant myth, put forward that renewables are cheaper. But, if these people actually believe, if Donica believes that wind is cheaper, then he will put his hand in the air now and say that we can get rid of the renewable subsidies schemes, because if they're cheaper, you don't need the subsidies. So let's put that one over to Donica and say, are you willing to get rid of the subsidies? Are you going to close the subsidy schemes?
Absolutely happy to accept that. For the last, Andrew's talking about 10 years ago when...
Well, no, just answer that question.
10 years ago, renewables did require subsidies to get them off the ground. In the last 5 years of contracts for difference, renewables have come in as the cheapest form of energy under the British
because
system
of the subsidies. Can you answer the question?
No, without subsidies. Without subsidies, they are subsidy-free. New solar and new wind is subsidy-free, and the International Monetary Fund.
But we can close the schemes. We don't need the schemes anymore.
Don't talk over me. I didn't talk over you.
I'll decide who talks.
Thank you. The International Monetary Fund said very clearly that solar and wind are the cheapest form of energy on the global market, both in and
I want
globally.
to come back briefly to Andrew. He said that solar and wind are the cheapest. He said there's no subsidies. Is that true or false? Is it?
No, I mean, we're paying out something. We're paying out millions of pounds every month in
Andrew,
subsidies to wind and solar. No, this month, at the moment.
Yeah,
at the moment, we are still paying
contracts.
So let's close the subsidies.
No, listen, I'll tell you, I'll override you both.
Close them to new entrants.
I'm pretty sure that
I'm
pretty sure that we're still paying subsidies. But OK, finally, let's go over to you, Andrew Montford. Is it time to scrap net zero? Yes or no?
Yeah, absolutely. Get rid of it. It's got to go.
Yes or no?
It's time to get rid of it as a legal obligation. I'm not against having a target to remove.
Yes or no? We need a yes or no. Yes or no? Time to scrap it. Donica McCarthy, yes or no?
It's our patriotic duty to act.
So is that a yes or no?
It's a total yes.
It's time to scrap net zero, yes. And also you... it's a no, isn't it?
It's Easter.
Jim Dale, yes or no?
Yeah, it's a big no. And James and Ross, you're going to hang your heads in shame.
That's it. Thank
when
you.
we see the
It was yes or no. That's
the
enough. Thank you, Jim. Thank you to all of you. Thank you for your thoughts. Lovely. Crikey. Right. So what do you think at home? This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up, the Great British Debate. I'm asking, is it time to scrap net zero? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, Danny and Christine. But first, let's get your latest news with Tatiana.
Nana, thank you and good afternoon. It's 5:33. These are the top stories from the GB newsroom. King Charles has made his first significant public appearance since his cancer diagnosis. Joined by the Queen, he smiled and waved as he left an Easter Sunday service at St George's Chapel in Windsor and went on to greet crowds, shaking people's hands. Other members of the royal family were also there, but the Prince and Princess of Wales missed the service as Catherine continues her cancer treatment. Tens of thousands of people turned out to see Pope Francis preside over Easter Mass at the Vatican and the delivery of his Urbi et Orbi blessing from the balcony of St Peter's Basilica. The pontiff, who's been dealing with health problems, used his address to renew his call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, as well as the release of all Israeli hostages. Almost 400 migrants crossed the Channel today as weather conditions continue to deteriorate. Over both days this weekend, Border Force officials intercepted 16 small boats carrying 735 people. It takes the total number of those who've arrived illegally to more than 5,400 this year, a third higher than the figure recorded this time last year. People smugglers are being accused of putting their lives in danger by launching overcrowded dinghies that cannot handle the strengthening winds and large swells. A new poll suggests the Tories are on track for their worst general election result. Survation found the party could win fewer than 100 seats, with Labour predicted to sweep to power with a landslide victory of 468 seats. The 15,000-person poll indicated the Conservatives would be wiped out in Scotland and Wales and hold just 98 seats in England. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Nana.
Thank you, Tatiana. Coming up, Supplement Sunday, where my panel and I dissect the stories of this week. But next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is it time to scrap net zero?
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
He's a genius. We know he's one of the few geniuses in the world. We have Mozart, we have perhaps Leonardo da Vinci. He's a genius. Of course, he's worth studying.
But Chris, did they not think that Ben Jonson wrote some of his works?
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Some people say that. There's lots of people out there who will question who wrote the plays. What's really important, of course, is the quality of the writing. And can I just add, I have some sympathy for my opponent in this debate. because I'm afraid he's going to have to justify something which many people will disagree with. But good luck to him. But I think we all know Shakespeare was a genius. I'm sure my
let's
friend
hear from Ryan.
Well.
This is Ryan Mark Parsons, who's a former star of The Apprentice. Tell us more, Ryan.
Well, I agree with the other guests. I'm not denying Shakespeare's cultural relevance and significance in history. I mean, I admire Shakespeare. But I guess in terms of his relevance, if you were to define relevance, the Oxford Dictionary says it's appropriate to the time, context and circumstances. And I think there's an argument to be had about whether Shakespeare is relevant in 2024. Let's just look at the language that he uses. It's extremely archaic. It's almost elitist because you have to have studied his works in order to understand the plays in which he wrote. So
I just want to tear my hair out when you say that. I mean,
well, it's true.
He survives for 500 years and then the Gen Zers chuck it up the wall. And you say it's not relevant.
Oh, he's more relevant than ever because what Shakespeare does tells us about human nature. The human nature in the 16th century or the 17th century, it was no different from today. You know, if you're looking at Vladimir Putin's headlines today, well, read Julius Caesar. Yes, the language can be difficult, but that's good because we need to stretch children. We need to present children with things which challenge them. Don't always make life easy for children.
Absolutely.
No, make them stretch them a little bit.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, welcome. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's fast approaching 39 minutes after 5 o'clock. Don't forget as well, download the GB News app. You can pick up all the shows and check out any of the things on the channel. But right now, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is it time to scrap net zero? The Energy Secretary, Claire Coutinho, claims that Labour's net zero plans could leave the UK in a very vulnerable position with China. And in an interview, the Cabinet Minister said that Labour's plan to move towards clean energy 5 years before the Tories would mean the country would be reliant on metals, cables and batteries, all made in China. And that is as Ed Miliband, the Tories, said that the Tories had failed on their green agenda over the last 14 years. And he said that many people have now moved abroad for work as the country has become reliant on imported energy structures. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to scrap net zero? Well, let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Well, I'm going to start with you, Danny Kelly, simply for the fact that you are a car person.
A car dealer.
A car dealer.
Oh, responsible for all those awful emissions.
Yeah, I mean, this ULEZ thing's got nothing to do with climate change or anything. That's to do with the air that we breathe.
Well, that will all that's part of emissions, though. That's part of the emissions. So
OK, but it's predominantly to do with the air that we breathe.
But it's about the emissions as well from the exhausts, which obviously the nitrogen is no good, but...
Yeah. OK, I'm a reluctant, and this may shock you, I'm a reluctant advocate now for net zero, but not pushing it forward, not bringing it forward 5 years. It's the futility of it all. And I listened to the impassioned debate with your 4 contributors. I don't think it's got anything to do with patriotism. This bringing forward and the push for net zero, it hurts a lot of people in their pockets. It's not popular amongst a lot of people, great swathes of the country. But I do defer to the scientists. You know, if a scientist is telling me, the majority of scientists, not every scientist...
Remember what they said over COVID?
The majority of scientists are telling me, or telling the United Kingdom that it's good, this net zero ambition, then I'm going to go with the majority of scientists. But it's the futility. What I find so frustrating is the futility of it all. The fact that we are doing all, and I think it is punitive for a lot of people.
Yeah, but if you think of the reality of what they're suggesting and then you end up reliant on China...
This is the futility of it.
This is the point here that I see. Yes, OK, if you really believe this, but then why would you put us in such a vulnerable position with China? Christine Hamilton.
Well, I'm absolutely... Of course, this net zero madness should stop. Theresa May started it all, and then the Labour Party have doubled down on it by bringing it all forward. It is crazy. This country has done its bit. We have reduced our emissions by more than, I think, anybody else in the world, virtually anybody else. We have done our bit. We are minute. We are less than 0.whatever% of the world emissions. We have done our share. We do not need to bankrupt ourselves and bankrupt individual consumers, because without the subsidies from everybody's electricity bills, etc., and taxpayer subsidies, none of these huge, great wind farms and solar panels and goodness knows what would happen. So they're not economic. China, meantime, is churning out coal-fired stations.
Right.
They increased their emissions by 5% last year, whereas we are constantly reducing ours.
Well, they're churning it out to sell us
mad
things.
to do it, and we are bankrupting people. We are destroying vast swathes of the countryside. What's wrong with fracking? What's wrong with using the gas that we've got? Instead of which, this mad dash for net zero, so people can say, oh, holier than thou, you know, I'm saving the planet. It's rubbish.
But it's not true, is it?
It's not true.
They're not saving the planet. And also, Monica said something about that there are no more subsidies and supplements. I think there are subsidies.
And also...
Is he right with saying that? I don't think he's right saying that.
I'm perfectly certain he's not right saying that. But the other thing is that, for example, take all these solar panels. 98% of them are manufactured in China. And there was a very good article in one of the papers today saying that it is done with Uyghur slave labour. So are we happy to have...
It's again, my reluctance, but I am going to defer to the scientists. You know, it's important, I suppose, the scientists would argue that it's important that we put pressure on China and other highly polluted countries.
Do you think they give a damn...
Allow me to finish my sentence.
Sorry.
No, but allow me to. If we put pressure on China collectively with predominantly other Western countries, then maybe we will gain some leverage on them to reduce their CO2.
Danny, you are...
All I'm doing...
Well, you could try and see if you can get them to apologise for COVID first, and then...
The idea that China would give a damn...
Yeah, but collectively you can put pressure on countries.
They don't care. They're isolationist in that sense. They've simply...
Well, if we accept that, what is the point of us trying to do anything about net zero?
There is no point.
That's the futility. It's a bit circular.
It is the futility.
It's the futility of it all. But I am going to defer. I am going to defer to the scientists.
We are bankrupting ourselves. We have done our bit, and we are now bankrupting ourselves.
We agree it's futile.
While China just, frankly, they are laughing.
We agree.
At us.
We agree about the futility, or our perception of the futility. But if collectively millions of scientists, or that's an exaggeration, thousands of scientists around the world are saying, look, this is the only thing we can do.
No, that's not true. I mean, take a look at the Global Warming Policy Foundation. Have a look at some of the stuff on their website. They always say all the scientists agree. No, they don't.
No, I didn't say all the scientists agree.
I said the majority.
But listen, let's remember that a lot of people talked about the science and called it settled science, and people were not allowed to question it. And that was for quite some time. And it's embedded now.
Exactly.
But this is the actual narrative. And the bottom line is I would like to see more research on both sides, and I want someone to prove to me that carbon really is the problem, and I want to see and understand it. And
but
I also
surely
want...
that evidence is out there.
No, but they have restricted the evidence of the other side of the argument.
No, they haven't.
Well, I think you've not even... You worked at the BBC. You weren't even allowed to say, question it. So, and we've only just now been able to do it because...
I don't think anyone is suppressing an alternative view.
Oh, yes, they are. Oh, yes, they are. Because people have been absolutely brainwashed into thinking that the planet is about to explode. Utterly, utterly brainwashed. So people cannot think that there is an alternative.
But we're discussing
we have done our bit. We have done our bit, and it is ludicrous to bankrupt the country. People's bills will be so much lower.
Oh, I agree, it's punitive.
Yeah, but well, listen, I mean, it would be interesting to see what our viewers think, because this show's nothing without them and their views. Let's welcome our great British voices on. This is their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. I've got two of you. I'm going to start with David Barham, Watford. David, so is it time now to scrap net zero?
Totally. If you look at the logic of it, says we've got to be green, we've got to do everything. It costs us more to be green ecologically than it does with normal fuels. I mean, when you talk about fossil fuels in the car, a car is more ecologically green being a petrol-driven motor, as Daniel Shaw will tell you, than an EV, which can never be recycled. If we want stuff from overseas, it has to be brought into the UK. So that's creating carbon emissions. I wish people would get off their hobby horse and realise the logic and the cost of doing. The same scientists who told us COVID could be wiped out by everyone staying indoors are the same scientists, by and large, who are saying, oh, no, we know what we're doing here. You don't. We're clever. You're not. You're thick. We're not. Stop being stupid. Stop laying down to the arms of the green lobby and actually start facing reality.
Well, they're probably different scientists, though, probably not the same ones, because obviously those scientists were focused on viruses. And anyway, look, there's lots of different views. Scientists say lots of different things. I'm going to go to you, Lee Harris.
Hi, Nana. I've got, probably like most people, no problem in principle with net zero, but, I believe, renewables should be part of a healthy energy mix. But the answer is definitely yes. We need to scrap these blatant virtue signalling arbitrary timeframes. It's self-indulgent political one-upmanship by the two main parties. These idiotic politicians seem to have absolutely no idea of the implications of what they're suggesting. They are completely out of touch. The ridiculous drive to net zero will hit people really hard in the pocket. And as you said earlier, we would have to rely on countries that don't have our best interests in heart. And I just want to make one point. I was really laughing earlier listening to your previous guests, not the wonderful guest you have in your studio now, Nana, that saying that wind power was cheaper. It is a false economy. If you listen to the excellent Liam Halligan, he explained this brilliantly. We have to keep gas power stations permanently running on standby to step in when there's no wind. And this costs a fortune and has put bills up for everyone. But honestly, I do think the tide is turning. Public opinion is changing. Look at what happened in Uxbridge with Sadiq Khan's ridiculous ULEZ policy. The by-election was a huge backlash, and we're still going to need oil and gas for the next 2 decades, as we need it to prop up renewables.
Well, listen, Lee,
in the short term.
No, stop. Lee brilliantly said, as ever.
Said, Lee,
well said,
yes.
Lee. Thank you so much. And also, of course, David Barwin Watford. Those are my great British voices. Lovely to hear their thoughts. What are yours? Stay tuned. Supplement Sunday is on the way next.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather. We've had some sunshine across the north and the west, but over the next 24 hours it does turn more unsettled. Low pressure dominating the weather yet again over the next few days. We see further spells of rain, heavy showers pushing across the country, some brisk winds later on in the week as well. For the evening time, we do have some heavy showers pushing into central southern areas. We could see some localised flooding here. Met Office warning in force for the evening time, and then overnight this rain pushes slowly northwards. Further rain pushing into eastern areas too, with Northern Ireland and Scotland seeing the driest weather with some clear spells, but the vast majority of us, temperatures remaining above freezing. So a mixed start on Monday. Outbreaks of rain across northern England into central parts and Wales as well. Some of this heavy at times. Bright skies following across central southern areas, but into the afternoon we'll see some heavy thundery showers developing, some hail possible. Parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland will see some drier weather, some sunny spells, and here temperatures lifting to around 13 or 14 Celsius. Feeling quite cold under the cloud and rain, temperatures in single figures. For Tuesday, we'll see areas of rain across the top and tail of the country. In between, we'll see some sunny spells, but some scattered showers also developing. And it remains unsettled for the week ahead. Further showers and some heavy spells of rain as well, and temperatures just climbing a little.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, welcome, and this is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. It's time now for Supplement Sunday, where my panel and I discuss some of the news stories that caught their eye. Danny Kelly, we'll start with yours.
Well, this is just indicative of the woke society that we live in. BBC Look East television, regional TV programming, is slammed for having all-white production team, despite corporations spending 600 grand last year on diversity and inclusion staff. I don't know whether we've got a picture of this, but even if we don't, there you go, look at it. Look at all that horrible white skin on display. 32 white people and not a black or an Asian person represented. And, of course, it's all kicking off on Twitter, particularly with one journalist or one radio presenter, a fella called Edward Adu.
Edward Adu, yes, I know him well.
Who is worried. He uses the word worried that there's not a black or a brown person there in that 32 lineup. I suggest Edward is mentally fragile if that worries him.
I don't think he is at all. I think he makes a good point. Listen, if you're going to spend over £600,000 on diversity, then you fail at the first hurdle. It's not working, is it?
Well, it's not a meritocracy, is it?
I used to work for Look East, actually, BBC Look East, so it's interesting.
Well, do you know what? If there are deliberately no black or brown people there, maybe it's not a meritocracy. Maybe the best people are there for the job.
The point is, if you're going to invest in diversity, then you can't even do it visually, then you've kind of got something wrong.
Well, and let's just remind ourselves who's paid that 600,
we have.
Whatever.
Christine,
we
you've
have.
not got long.
Right, no, OK, this is about, believe it or not, Alan Titchmarsh's crotch. We don't quite know why, but North Korea, they pirate stuff. They got hold of a television programme about gardening secrets, and the Titchmarsh trousers, he was kneeling down, and everything was blurred from the waist down because apparently he was wearing jeans, and jeans are a symbol of Western decadence, so they had to blur him out.
They blurred Titchmarsh out.
Titchmarsh is delighted because he now thinks that he's in the league with you know, Rod Stewart and all these Tom Jones. Okay. Their trousers are too tight.
On the story about the BBC, a spokesperson said we're one of the most diverse organisations in the UK, and judgments shouldn't be made about one picture. But we know we have to go, have further to go, and remain committed to creating a workforce that represents the diversity of the UK. Right, OK, so my supplement is this one. A revolutionary jab, and this is incredible, to help prevent dementia could be available on the NHS in as little as 5 years, in what has been hailed as a massive breakthrough by health experts. Now, the vaccine is currently in the early stages of patient trials and is tipped to become widely available within the NHS within 5 years. How amazing.
Wow. Well, to somebody of my age, that would be very splendid indeed.
Well, no, you'd have probably got it by now. I don't think you're going to...
No, I don't think so. I'm entering the danger.
I knew your calling was one in medicine.
I'm entering the danger period of dementia.
540,000 people.
Well, listen, on today's show, I've been asking, is it time to call a general election? According to our Twitter poll, 62.8% of you say yes, and only 37.2% of you say no. Wow, interesting. So you think it's time? Well, a huge thank you. Oh, and also the question to whether to scrap net zero, 92.8% of you say yes, we should do that. Thank you to my panel, author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton. Thank you, Christine. And also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Thank you to you. And a huge thank you to you at home for your company. I look forward to seeing you on Saturday, same time, same place, 3 o'clock. I'll leave you with the weather. Have a fabulous week.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather. It's been fairly sunny across the northern half of the UK. We've seen increasing cloud in the south, and we're going to see further rain push in over the next few hours. But looking at the bigger picture, low pressure dominates at the moment. It does mean further showers and rain is on the way. And we've got some heavy rain this evening across southern parts of England, and this pushing slowly northwards into the Midlands and Wales as we head into the early hours. Thicker cloud and rain also pushing in from the North Sea to affect northeast England. Generally a little drier across Scotland, Northern Ireland. Here some clear spells, and for most temperatures remaining above freezing. So it's a mixed start to Monday. We've got cloud and outbreaks of rain across this central swathe of the UK. Some brighter skies to the north of it and to the south, but it's to the south where we'll see some heavy showers developing as we move through into the afternoon. Some hail, some thunder in there. We could see some local disruption. Cold under the cloud and rain, particularly northern England, southern Scotland, 9 or 10 degrees. In the best of any sunny spells, either side of this, up to around 14 or 15 degrees. For Tuesday, a mixed picture. We'll have sunny spells and scattered showers across much of the country. However, low cloud, rain and drizzle will affect parts of Scotland. Then later on in the day, further wet and windy weather starts moving into the southwest. It remains unsettled through into Wednesday and Thursday with further rain at times, temperatures around average.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
So many of you have been getting in touch over the WASPy issue. And actually, I just want to bring forward a view from Tony, who has written in to say something that we haven't included in this conversation so far. Tony says, it was well publicised. Stop all the crying, his words. He says the Pensions Act 1995 provided for this change. It was marginally sped up in 2010, but the fundamental issue, the WASPy issue, didn't come about in 2010 or 2011. It came about in 1995.
Yep.